Live now. And we are live officially. Hello, world.
Hey, everybody.
Hello. All right.
Welcome to this very exciting episode of the Indie Beer Show.
Do we have a special guest today? Do we? Oh, yeah.
Yes, a little bit.
I didn't notice.
Yes, Abel the Average is here with us.
Maggie made it
average. You know, if you get my my initials, it actually is the abbreviation for average. Abel Valdez Garcia, AVG.
Oh, wow. Does that mean that right now Brian is above average?
He is above average.
Vinny, too, for that matter.
Oh, wow.
Stella's next to average. She's next to average.
I'm okay with that. Yeah.
You gotta love.
The whole show won't be like this, Vinny, I swear.
He's like, is it so already cool?
I think you've heard this on other beer podcasts before. We are not going to have enough time together, but we'll get into as much as we can handle, and you are willing to, and you certainly bring the beer guys out. We're over 20 people already. Let's fire it up. Hello and welcome. I don't think
it's a serious show, Brandon. This is a serious show right now. Okay?
Brandon. No joshing around today.
This week we are joined by what I consider one of the biggest craft beer originators at least in California, maybe in half the country at least. Sir, please introduce yourself and try to encapsulate what you do at Russian River Brewing.
Well, first, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. You guys know I started my beer career down in Southern California. So my wife, Natalie, and I own Russian River Brewing Company. Today I was email responder after releasing Pliny the Younger.
I'm very sorry.
Yesterday I was something else, but it's all good. But my day to day right now is pretty much filled with just managing COVID stuff and managing our brewing team. We just put a little pilot brewery in, so I've been playing on that a lot, making some new recipes and just looking to the future. And it's every day is a little bit different for me, but I started down in Southern California.
Yes, you started in what we consider very, very, very North County, up in Temecula wine region. But we really appreciate you spending the time with us. We have to get right into beer because this is a beer show. And the first beer we're drinking is Intinction Pinot Noir. So if you could kind of break down what this beer is and the process it took to make it for us, we'd be very appreciative.
Yeah. And I'm just pulling up some notes right here. So Intinction is a line of beers that we do. And so the first Intinction we made was using Sauvignon Blanc grape juice. And that first one was a barrel-aged Pilsner that we aged in Sauvignon Blanc barrels, then and with three very unique strains of Brettanomyces. Brettanomyces being a yeast that often in the wine industry is considered a negative or a flaw, but in beer it actually can be really nice. So with that one, we then added Sauvignon Blanc grape juice, put the beer back into the barrels, let it ferment out. And then after that, we came out with Intinction Merlot, and there we used our spontaneous beer as the base beer, and then added, for that though, it was whole grapes though that we destemmed, and then we took that same concept with the Pinot Noir, and this is kind of a cool base beer because we partnered with one of our favorite wineries called Linmar. Linmar makes some of the best Pinot Noir in the area. They're just a short drive from where I'm at now at our house. And so for this base beer, we made a pretty neutral recipe that I put into used Pinot Noir barrels from Linmar, and then aged it. But we also, a year into it, got some lees, and lees is the leftover yeast that's at the bottom of the barrel. So we got those lees from Linmar, added it to the beer, aged it some more, and then eventually hit it with the Pinot Noir grapes, which also came from Linmar. So it was a really cool collaboration with a really, really high-end winery that makes just absolutely beautiful beer. And so we've made it since made it again, but this is the first release from last year. So we gave it a pretty good amount of age. And when you drink these beers, they're really that cool hybrid between beer and wine, and they really are a great transition between those, a beer and wine. So someone that maybe isn't a huge beer fan, this is a great beer to get them started in beer with. And it's not overly sour. It's definitely tart, but it doesn't take you off to, oh my God, pucker up and whatnot. I definitely, when I think back to when we started making barrel aged beers back, it was 1999, and that was at Corbel, where Russian River started. We were just using Brett. We weren't adding any bacteria. Then when we got to Santa Rosa in 2004, first batch of Temptation there didn't have anything other than Brett in it. But after that, we started using bacteria. And then there got to be a point probably in the, late 2008, 9, 10, somewhere in there, where our beers got a little too sour and acidic. And when we moved to our production brewery, our old production brewery in South Santa Rosa, we had a proper barrel room, had better refrigeration. And in time, we were just able to kind of hone in that acidity and make it a little bit softer like it is now.
Thank you. If I could speak for everyone that's drinking this beer currently, it is an amazing hybrid between a funky sour beer and straight wine. Huge barrel oak character coming through with the Pinot Lees. Incredible balance. It's got a real ruby kind of grapefruit brightness to it, even though no sourness, no pith. Terrific beer. Big fan of all the shuns, but this one's very nice.
I'm gonna go the other way because I'm not a huge wine drinker. I'm not a fan of wine, but I would drink this all day. Yeah. If this is what wine is, I'm good with that.
I mentioned bringing the sourness down, and one of the ways we did that was just with temperature, where we use the same stock of funk, so when we started doing this in 2004 at the pub in Santa Rosa, where we were making sour barrel aged beers, actually adding bacteria, I had this culture that I made, and I had some clever name for it that I can't even remember. It's like the Funky Bunch or something stupid like that. But anyways, and we would keep it going. But once we started making spontaneous beer, we then started pulling the dregs from the bottom of those spontaneous barrels, and we call that synambic. Synambic is a play between Sonoma and lambic that we bring together, and name our spontaneous beer synambic, and then multiple batches of synambic will go to get blended in to make beatification. In the case of the Intinction Merlot, it was multiple barrels of synambic that was the base, and but once those barrels are empty with just the base synambic, we will roll the barrels, and if we need more dregs, we'll add that. And we've got two different tanks that we grow the bacteria in, and this bacteria, and then it's that bacteria that gets topped into all the other beers: Temptation, Supplication, Consecration, to add the acidity to it. So it's this carry-on process where the bacteria is technically native Sonoma County wild yeast that's entered into our wort through that cool ship or horny tank process that we use at both our breweries.
Oh, okay.
Wonderful, and I can taste your terroir. So thank you. I appreciate it in every bottle that I get. But let's take a step back and let's kind of see if we can encapsulate the history of Russian River in 10 seconds. It's impossible, but the overall glossy coat. We know you started down here in Temecula in '94 with the Blind Pig brewing at your family's winery in Temecula. At the time, you were one of the first people to be using this really weird yeast from this crazy guy named Chris White. I don't know if you realize how integral to his success you were as well, but you helped spurn his whole entire career and all of White Labs.
Have you ever heard the drug dealer story about us and Chris White? You know, I'd buy yeast from him, and he was growing it at UCSD, and I'd give him a wad of cash, and he'd give me a brown bag, but I'd call him from a payphone down the hill. So I'm sure it just looked really bad from afar.
Sketchy, super sketchy.
At the time, that was the only way to get his product. I mean, he was, like you said, he was in college. He was a biotech guy and propping it up at school and using it for class credit and selling it on the side.
Yeah, I mean, we were his third customer, third after Pizza Port and Homebrew Mart. So.
Yeah.
Nice.
This is rad. In '97, you head north to. We're the first time you are actually called Russian River Brewing, but you're working for Korbel. Then you guys, Korbel decides this beer shit don't make any money. We're done. And in your genius at the time, you and your wife Natalie purchase the brand or inherit the brand. There's a little weirdness in the lore of you.
Traded my severance package for the Russian River name. So nice. I walked away with no money, but I did get the Russian River name, any of the beer names that we had. So at the time, we had already made Pliny the Elder. We made Damnation, a couple others. And they also gave me our quarter-acre hop yard, which we moved to Brian Hunt's property, Brian Hunt being Moonlight Brewery. And we grew hops with Brian for many years. And that was really fun, too.
That is awesome. And then you start with a brew pub in downtown Santa Rosa. You outgrow it in like 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And you keep this wonderful thing that I think has been integral to your growth is underserving the demand of your market constantly for several years. 2008, you finally opened what we would consider a brewery, a production type facility where you can crank out, vast amounts, air quotes, of beer compared to your brew pub system. Then that serves you for another 20 minutes. You meet your demand for about 20 minutes. Then you're under demand again for another 10 years. Late 2017, you guys finally move on into building what we now know as Windsor.
Yep.
That opens in 2018. And again, another 20, 30 minutes that you can meet demand with your new facility. And now you're still not able to produce enough beer for what everyone wants. But
so congrats on that.
Thank you. Thanks. I'm not sure some people don't think that today, but
there you go. It brings us all to today. So because of the restrictions of COVID and because you care about the health of the public and your staff, you decide to move Pliny the Younger, first time ever, to online bottle sale only.
Yeah.
It sells out in 30 seconds. Now,
yes.
I know you're saying 4 or 5 minutes because that's how long it took for all the credit card processes to happen. I was there. I was watching that screen say,
I was
waiting to charge you money, and then, sorry, it's gone.
It's in your cart. It's in your cart.
Yeah. It's like, us beer geeks all know in your cart is only step one. It's only step one. Yeah. There are many websites where like Amazon, if they have a release of something, if you get it in your cart, it's reserved for like 5 minutes. Those protections in beer sales have long been gone. Like 7 or 8 years, they took those off because people would just leave beer sitting in their cart and not buy them. My understanding is you had roughly 100,000 people trying to buy this beer, and you had 1,600 cases. Are those numbers relatively accurate?
We had 110, little over 110,000 active users in queue today when Natalie turned it on. I was literally sitting in her office and I watched her click it on, and we had 8,000 mixed packs and just a little over 8,000 mixed packs. And so that sold out in 5 minutes. I'll be honest. Actually, first I want to go back to one thing that you were talking about the buildup. We always get accused of like artificially, making the demand greater than the supply, but really the fact is that we've always been really cautious from a business standpoint, and have never wanted to get what's the saying in skiing, get out over your tips, and so And although I don't ski anymore because Natalie had knee replacement, so it's like that. It's like that scene in Pulp Fiction. My girlfriend's a vegetarian. It pretty much makes me a vegetarian.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, we've always been very cautious that way. And we started with all investors. We didn't borrow any money, so we didn't have any debt when we opened Santa Rosa, but we did have 30 investors, and there is no such thing as a silent investor. They may be silent on paper, but we were really blessed to have great investors, and we were eventually able to buy them all out. But even when we got to our production brewery, we did take out a loan. But once we paid that loan off, we only paid cash for stuff. Like if I needed a new tank, Natalie and I would sit down. We'd say, okay, this is what it costs. We won't buy it until we pay cash. And it wasn't until we bought out all of our investors that we took out a pretty good chunk of money. We then waited to pay that loan off before we went into building the Windsor brewery that you were just talking about. And then now we took out, millions of dollars of debt. But, at the same time, Natalie and I are really proud that we did it ourselves. And, we took care of our investors. Not one of our investors can say that, we didn't pay them enough. They made wild returns on their investment. And then when we built Windsor, we did it the old fashioned way with cash and debt. And it's, we own the brewery ourselves, and, we didn't sell out to a big, multinational brewery. And not that there's anything wrong with that. But we didn't take private equity. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but we just like that. As Natalie says, we're fiercely independent. So, but with the Windsor brewery, with debts, in the millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars, you have to take a huge step. So we went from, I think when we opened Windsor, we were at like 14,000 barrels between our old production brewery and Santa Rosa, maybe 16,000, whatever it was. And now we're 27 months into Windsor. And last year, 2020, we did just over 40,000 barrels. But we're back to like a 5% growth rate a year. And we love that really slow growth. Remember Fritz Maytag once saying, and I'll probably get this wrong, but it's an old accounting investment. It's called like the law of seven, that if you keep growing like 7% a year in like 8 years, whatever, I think 7 years, you end up growing 100%. And so it's just basically a slow growth model. And that's really what we are. We're a slow growth model. We took one giant step, and you guys probably see more Russian River beer in the market now down in
way more.
Definitely.
And I'm glad, Brian, you're not the only one. I saw Kat in your screen, and one of ours just walked by too. So, yeah.
Yes, we are big fans of pets in the background. So.
Yeah, we have three cats here: Ferdinand, Growler, and Matilda. Matilda's named after the Countess of the story from Orval. And then Growler, that's obvious. And then Ferdinand was the name of the street that the old production brewery was on, was Ferdinand Court. And those Ferdinand and Growler used to live with us at the brewery, and then they moved home with us eventually. Anyways,
nice.
they were shitty mousers.
Well, good thing to make them house cats and let them retire from airlift working. One of the things that I know you also saw that kind of influenced when you guys made your move to Windsor and how you did it was you have several friends in the industry that overextended themselves and then had to suffer a major contraction or a business failure. So I firmly believe you did it in a way that is a lot more sustainable and also more equitous, meaning, while you have tens of $millions of debt, you also have an asset that is yours. Yeah. That whole facility, the brewing equipment, all of that is a real tangible thing, not just a bunch of, numbers on paper. So
that's an interesting point because when this property, we first looked at it a year before we actually bought it, and the guys that we ended up buying it from early on initially didn't want to sell it to us. They wanted to do a lease to purchase over 10 years, and we were like, nope. And we left and started looking at other properties about a mile south towards the airport. The town of Windsor got wind of this and convinced these two owners to sell the property to us because the town of Windsor thought they lost the opportunity to get us. And in one small way, I think it was a little stick in the, the jab in the stomach of Santa Rosa that they were able to get the new Russian River and not Santa Rosa.
Not Santa Rosa.
But obviously we're in COVID right now, so there isn't much travel, but we're really proud of what we built, and it's a dream brewery. I always liken it to, think about how few people get to build their own house. And if you ever had the opportunity to build your own house, like, what are the things you would do? And Natalie and I were stupid enough to do both at the same time. We built a house and the brewery at the same time. Like, how stupid is that? But like, I love to cook. And so like our kitchen, there was very few things that I was like, we have to have this. But in the kitchen, I was like, I wanted an island. I wanted a second sink in the island. And this is an odd one, but I wanted a bookshelf so that we could have cookbooks and stuff in there. I think it's a beautiful look. But but if you think about it, you don't get to build your dream house. We got to build our dream brewery and we got to add things and we got to design it. And every piece of property I went to, I had some different layout so literally like all 7 pieces of property that we were considering, I have a design of a brewery that could fit on it. And then we got help from all of our friends. I mean, first Ken Grossman from Sierra Nevada, Matt Brennelson, Firestone Walker, John Mallett from Bell's, Dan Carey from New Glarus, friends over in Europe. It was really amazing. And John Mallett gave us some really good advice very early on, and we built what's called a spine. And the spine carries all the utilities right down the dead center of the brewery. And then those utilities just jump on and off to each of the rooms. And all of the main production, like brew house, fermenters, yeast, that's all on one side. Then all the support equipment's on the other side. So, and it's just a really, really smart design. Open top fermenters, cool ships, really, really neat.
Wow.
Nice. So you're talking about building your dream. Have you ever thought about making tasting rooms, say in San Diego?
We haven't. No,
you should. You should.
We haven't. We've always really kind of believed in that distribution model, and Stone's our distributor down there. We have a great partnership with them, and I think a part of it is quality of life. That although we would, we love coming down there, but we really love. I mean, we could have easily built the Windsor facility in another state or something, and it would have been 50% of the cost. And probably even other parts of California, but it was really important for us to be close to home. This is where we live, and a lot of restaurateurs that open multiple restaurants, the second, third restaurant tends to fall off, and we didn't want that to happen. I love being 1 mile or about 5 miles between 10 miles, whatever it is, between the facilities. I drive an electric car so I can jump in the HOV lane and use it to get between and like peak hours and whatnot. So so we've never thought about that. Mm-hmm. Plus there's an amazing beer. I mean, come on. There's so much great beer in San Diego and Southern California.
But I'm just saying, how much better would it be if you were here? Just putting that out there, Vinny. Just putting that out there.
All I can say is thank God for O'Brien's, which has kept us in Russian River
right?
so long.
Yeah.
And shun weekends. Yes.
Yeah. O'Brien Livewire was our first San Diego account, and O'Brien's was our second. And when we started selling beer at O'Brien's, Jim O'Brien owned it, and it was more of a industrial lager bar. And they had Sierra, Pale Ale, and then they started selling our beer. But Jim doesn't get enough credit for being one of the early beer people in Southern California, for teaching an early generation of beer drinkers what good beer is.
Yeah,
Agreed.
absolutely, yeah.
We appreciate every single person that ever helped you, which is crazy for us to hear that so many legends in brewing helped you. Where we see you the other way. You are incredibly helpful and approachable. So like, I know many home brewers that have reached out to you and gotten recipe tips, gotten a version of Pliny or Blind Pig recipe that they can make at home. I even know a couple of people that were somehow able to get a barrel from you by basically begging.
I'll still do that if the timing's right.
Amazing. And what it really harkens to you, like embodying what we expect from craft beer on the exceptional level is giving back to your community, recognizing your roots, and helping those people a little bit too.
Well, I try to pay it forward now. Everything that some of my heroes have done for us, I try to do the same to younger brewers that are that have maybe not been in it as long as we have.
I if I remember correctly from another podcast I listened to that you were on, Steal This Beer.
Yeah.
I think Vince from Pizza Port shared like the original recipe of Chronic with you.
No, of Swami's.
Or Swami's. Oh,
yeah.
Swami's. Excellent.
Yeah. When I had known Vince and Gina just as a customer, and I had probably taken them homebrew, and Vince and I love Swami's. I mean, that really is the original West Coast IPA in San Diego. There isn't anyone that can predate that, in my opinion. And but I had this great homebrew recipe. I'd only brewed one commercial beer at the brewery that I ended up buying the equipment for Blind Pig. So I called Vince and I said, "Hey, can you help me bump the recipe up from homebrew up? I'm not quite sure, if it's just times 10 or whatever." And he goes, "Oh, here's the Swami's recipe. I've had your homebrew. Just use this as a guide, and it'll give you a baseline, and then you can just plug in your information, take mine out." And that was that. And Vince was like so good about that. And he once said, we should open a brewery together, and it would be called Two Vinces Will Brew for You. And he goes, "I'll do the cooking and you can do the brewing." So we never did it, but I Natalie and I have a really soft spot for Vince and Gina Marsaglia. They are such an incredible part of that San Diego beer scene. So
that was as close as we came to having a Russian River location down here.
There you go.
Two
That's
Vinces
as
will brew
close
for
as we
you.
got. And
Two Vinces.
Whenever we make the Mount Rushmore of San Diego beer, they will definitely be one of the heads. I mean, there's no question. Pizza Port's right there. So before we move on to a hoppy beer, which you're actually more known for than the shun beers, can you kind of give us like why shun? Why did you decide that all of your wild, spontaneous, and barrel fermented beers were going to end with shun?
Yeah, so it started out with them being Belgian beers, and then we started doing, sour barrel aged. But I had this great homebrew recipe of a strong golden ale, and I was doing this out at Corbel. So this would be in 1997, and they had already had this nice 3-tier homebrew system. And I love Duvel, and I love that whole idea of the kind of devilish, kind of connection to the name and whatnot. And so I thought, well, it needs to have like some sort of diabolical name, but I couldn't think of it. So I just sat on this recipe, and in 1990, late 98, maybe even 99, I was driving home and still remember where I was. I was making a left turn off of East Side Road onto Old Redwood Highway with Rodney Strong and Jay Winery on my left. And I was listening to some, indie pop station, and Squirrel Nut Zipper was on with their song Hell. And right in the middle of it, he spells damnation. He goes the D and the A and the M and the N, the A-T-I-O-N, and then he does it again, spelling damnation. I'm like, that's it. And so I'm like, God, Damnation, that's the name. So like we literally brewed it a few weeks later. But by the time I got home, I said, well, God, if we had Damnation, we got to have Redemption. And then to kind of take the story back to San Diego, back then, like making sour barrel aged beers, I was just starting to think about it. There wasn't anyone, there aren't books and websites and stuff. So I was telling Tommy about these names, Tommy from Lost Abbey. Back then he was at Pizza Port, Solana Beach, and he's a raised good Catholic. And he says, well, if you have Damnation and Redemption, you have to have Salvation and Temptation. And so that's where Salvation and so Damnation and Redemption I came up with. Tommy came up with Salvation and Salvation and Redemption, I think were then. I did Damnation, Redemption. He did Salvation, Temptation, and then after that, they just started all going. So, and then we also make a Valentine's Day called Rejection, and Tommy came up with that one too. So, I owe Tommy a lot of good beer names.
Speaking of Tommy from Lost Abbey, he could certainly commiserate with your experience of selling Pliny the Younger today. They've had some very, very big difficulties with Duck on their side that are similar to yours.
I probably have a text from him because we're good friends, and but I haven't even looked at my phone. I literally ran out of my office, jumped in my car, called my mom because she lives here locally in assisted living, and I don't see her regularly, so I try to call her every day. And then had a quick bowl of soup, and here I am with you.
Well, we appreciate the incredible dedication, sir. And in honor of you being on our show for our top 3 this week, we decided we were going to talk about our top 3 beers that you have ever made, our favorite Russian River beers ever. We're going to start with Abel. What's your 3rd favorite Russian beer ever, sir?
My 3rd favorite one is the STS Pils. That is just your basic Pils, Czech Pilsner beer, and I've never seen any problem with it. It's one of those ones where, I'm a big heavy drinker. I drink either the very high ABVs or stouts, and if I could sit with any type of, I love Pilsners because those are just super clean, and that's my favorite, is the STS Pils. I was kind of going in between that and Velvet Glow, but I stuck with STS.
Both good choices, and how nice of you that was included as a bonus in our box.
Yep.
By the way, very nice box. Very nice box, Vinnie. So thank you very much.
That's a nice batch of STS that's out right now. And that's probably the batch that's out in the marketplace in San Diego right now, too.
Well, I'm just glad we weren't drinking it tonight so I can save it later. I looked at our list. I'm like, it's not on the list tonight. Yes.
If you want to make sure you're drinking the same batch, ours was bottled on 1/15. So, sending us this 2-week aged Pilsner, I don't know, Vinnie. That's questionable there. Estella, number 3.
Road to Hill 56 for me.
Yeah.
100% Simcoe. That's all I got to say about that.
Yep.
That's about that. So, yeah. I'm not a beer nerd or expert like these guys here. I'm just a drinker. So my choices are going to be very different than theirs. I'm your average beer chick that just wants to drink. So that's my choice.
It's a nice pale ale.
I love that she says that. She's also the only person on the show that owns a brewery. So,
okay, you can stop with that. Stop with that.
So it's really funny that you're just the drinker. Anyways, Mr. Hernandez, number 3.
All right. So I should have been kicked out of San Diego a long time ago. While I do love hoppy, San Diego style West Coast IPAs and all of that, I love hops. I love shun beers so much. I could have went with Damnation, could have went with Temptation or Compunction, another great one. But really, I love Brett. And so I love Sanctification. The way that beer is different from batch to batch in such fun and interesting ways that you can't in any way get your head around or expect, it's always a surprise when you have it. Yeah. And so I always enjoy that. And one of my favorite memories is having it during GABF at Falling Rock Tavern with a buddy of mine. It's like, yeah, I think we have that in the back. Wonderful night, wonderful beer every time, and probably the beer that I buy the most if I can get my hands on it down here.
That's awesome, man. And for me, Brandon kind of mentioned it. For me, my 3rd favorite is Compunction. Pluot is a very weird fruit on its own, but in this beer, it just really brings this incredible, again, a weird wine quality, even though you're not getting that from any ingredient that's traditionally used in wine. At the time, the first time I had it 7-ish years ago, it blew my mind that you had that big fruit and big funk and at the time, high acidity. That triangle for me, the early batches of Compunction were much more acidic than the newer ones.
That's what I was saying earlier.
Yeah, and at the time I was also a big Rare Barrel fan, so the heavy acidic quality.
Talking about acidic
was right in what I was looking for.
That's really important.
Exactly.
Acidic being like balsamic vinegar, which you don't want, but acidic is good.
Yeah, strip the enamel off my teeth. Yeah. Don't make me think red wine vinegar. Those things are great. So that would be my number 3, man. So thank you.
I remember Lauren from New Belgium once said, I think the Compunction just dropped my pH by 1, on the pH scale.
That's great, man. We need more beer in our glass. And it turns out that beer number 2 is Citra Flash Mob. Brandon is modeling currently, so is Estella. So what is the background on this beer? and it's nice and clear. We like that around here.
Yeah, I didn't send you anything hazy. You know, we make a couple hazy beers. I'm not, you know, I like them. They're good. We make nice hazy beers, but I love clean, crisp beers, whether it's West Coast Pale Ale, whatnot. I don't have anything against hazy IPAs. I absolutely love Juicy Bits from Weldworks in Colorado. That's probably my favorite hazy IPA. So this started out, and you said Citra Flash Mob, but you actually have to say Citra Flash Mob IPA, because we make Citra Flash Mob Pale Ale, which came before the IPA, and then we did the IPA. So the idea behind the Citra Flash Mob Pale Ale, which was the first beer, was this experiment using all Citra hops, and they were what's called flash kilned. And flash kilned is this experimental process that we are a part of a larger experiment with Yakima Chief Hops and Tributary Farms, which is one of the family farms. Pat Smith has that. And Pat's dad is Mike Smith, who, along with the Carpenter family and the Peralts, were the three families that not only started Yakima Chief couple decades ago, but they also own the Simcoe hop. So there you go. And so we have a very strong connection because of our use of Simcoe. But anyway, so what, some of your viewers, listeners might know what hop creep is. Some of them don't. But basically, in a nutshell, hop creep is this phenomenon that has always been here. It's you can go back and find papers back from the 1800s and England, and they're talking about a secondary fermentation that's happening in the cask. And it was only recently that I think it was Dr. May from SS Steiner Hops found some research, or did some research, that it's called dry hopping, because when you add dry hops, they start a secondary fermentation often, and they dry the beer out. Well, the problem is that when you have fermentation, you make what's called diacetyl, which is butterscotch flavor, which is not what you want. And so you have to let the beer sit for some time to let that secondary fermentation finish. The reason why that happens is that there's enzymes in the hops. And it was only about 6-7 years ago that in modern time it was rediscovered. Back in the old day, they had a better name. It wasn't called hop creep. They called it the freshening power of hops. So better marketers back then. But anyways, why it's called hop creep is because the gravity starts creeping down and it's getting drier. It can be a real problem though, because it can overcarbonate your beer. It can change your alcohol. It can put you out of spec, but it can also make this horrible diacetyl flavor. So everyone in the industry is working really hard to try to figure out how to at least lessen it. So one of the ideas, so we're doing a lot of work where we're kilning our hops at higher temperatures to then reduce the enzymatic activity that those that the hops have. But another idea that Pat Smith had was to flash kiln them. So take the hops, after they pick the hops, they lay them in the kiln bed, and then they bring the temperature up. Typically, most hops these days are kilned at 130 Fahrenheit. He'll bring the temperature up with air and heat to 155. Once it hits 155, he holds it there for 5 minutes, and then he'll bring the temperature back down to 130 and finishes the kilning process, and calling it flash kiln, with the idea that he's denaturing some of those enzymes. You have to get up to like 175 to denature them completely, I think is the number. At that point, you're gonna blow off all the beautiful aromas. So anyways, that's where Citra Flash Mob started, from the pale ale, and then we carried it on and have this beer, which is Citra Flash Mob IPA. And I should note that this is one of my favorite new labels. So Citra Flash Mob Pale Ale has these little hops dancing on it. Those are just random on Citra Flash Mob Pale Ale. Those are just some hops that our artist Jason Roberson drew up. On this one, I gave him a concept. There's that great scene in Napoleon Dynamite where Napoleon is on the stage at school and he's doing this great dance. You can Google it and find it on YouTube or whatever. And so I did it on my phone and I snapped pictures at all these great moves and I sent them to Jason. And so these are actually all Napoleon Dynamite dance moves. And if you watch the dance scene, it literally, you can find almost all these moves on there.
That is freaking awesome, man. Funny. And we always love to get those inside little things about artwork or the beer itself. We also have heard a rumor that there is some connection to a brewer from San Diego, Adrian, who used to work at Society, who now works for you.
Yeah.
And this beer.
Well, Adrian has been with us now for just about a year, I believe. I think he's coming up on his 1 year anniversary. And yeah, Adrian was at Society, and as you guys know, Travis Smith, who was one of the founders of Society with Doug, was our first brewer hire at Russian River in Santa Rosa about 3 months after we opened, and he came in with a 6-pack of beer. That was his resume. He actually started out
great resume,
just working for beer and pizza, and then we hired him a month or two later. And and Adrian applied for the job that we had an opening, and I hate when we end up taking a brewer from one of our friends' breweries, but we also don't poach. If they come to us, that's that. So anyways, and Travis had already sold his part in by this point in Society, but he called me or sent me a text and he goes, "Hey, you got a guy that's Natalie's just here stealing some beer." So, but Travis called and says, "Hey, this guy named Adrian applied," and I just give him the biggest, props and tip my hat to him. And so Adrian works at both of the breweries, so he's probably brewed Citra Flash Mob, I'm assuming. So
that's awesome, man. And
he's an outstanding human being. I was so happy to hear him going up there, and his whole family's up there. So
yeah,
definitely not a poach. It was just a great next step for him.
We love Adrian, and he's so he's a sponge for information. And one of the things I'm really looking forward to is when we get through COVID and we can not be wearing masks and all be in a room together. This little pilot brewery, it's a pretty small room, so I don't want to have multiple brewers in there at the same time. But once we do, I'm really looking forward to being able to hang out with our brewers and brew beers, letting them build recipes, and me just being the assistant brewer to them because I just happen to know how all this equipment works. But letting these guys make beers, because that's when you apply for a job at Russian River, that's one of the things that we ask you is creativity, recipe development an important part? Because I do control most of all of our recipes, but I do want to have this new creative outlet for our brewers, and it's something that I've dreamed up for years to have for our team.
And trust me, every single one of your fans is like, yes, please give us some one-off Russian River beers.
Yeah,
please.
Well, we did that. The first beer that we brewed in the pilot brewery, Natalie and I brewed together. Of course, we don't have to wear a mask together, which was nice. And we rebrewed the inaugural ale, which was now considered the first double IPA ever made in America, that we made down at Blind Pig in Temecula in 1994. We took the recipe and recreated it exactly as it was on a 5-barrel level. And, yields were horrible because it was the first batch, but we canned it and sold it online and at our gift shops, and it sold out like that. But it was really cool, and it was really fun, and it has this old school taste to it. Do you guys know who Stan Hieronymus is? He wrote the Hop book and Brew Like a Monk and others. And he and I were just talking the other day, and I sent him a can because he was the one that first wrote about me, being the first one to make double IPA. He was the one that really kind of traced that all. I thought, Stan would really like this. And he said to me, it really does taste like 1994. What I mean by that is that there was no Simcoe, Mosaic, Citra, Galaxy, Nelson. It was when I started Blind Pig, Columbus wasn't even a hop. Centennial had just been released a couple years earlier. When I started homebrewing in '89 in San Diego, there was a homebrew shop in El Cajon called Beer and Winecraft. And my friend Dennis, who has Fathom Bistro out on Shelter Island, he and I were roommates. And we were roommates, and he was my original homebrew buddy with our roommate Steve. And Dennis and I would go out there, and they had these two hops called CFJ4 and CFJ90. And CFJ90 ended up becoming Centennial. CFJ4 is gone. The only other two people that know what CFJ4 is, Ken Grossman kind of remembers it, and then Steve Dressler, the retired Sierra Nevada brewmaster. He remembers CFJ4. Steve and I always talk about that hop whenever we're chatting, which isn't much these days. But there's a hop that was just gone. But you only had Chinook, Cascade, Centennial, and then by late 94, Columbus had been been released as the way of IPA hops. There was Galena and Nugget, but those are more just bittering hops. Like at the time, I know Swami's was bittered with Galena, but it's like Citra makes making IPA so easy.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
If I could just go off scripture 1 second, I'd love to know from someone who has such a passion for the hops that have, been the basis of your recipes for so long. Are there any that have kind of become less in vogue that you were surprised along the way, and any that came on strong that you said, I would have never thought that was going to be like the next it hop?
The one that it seems very popular now, but I started out loving it, and it was I can't remember the number, but it's Sabro now, whatever Sabro's number was, because we were the first brewery to ever use Sabro in its number form, HBC, whatever it is. And but over time, it's become so over the top, like minty, and it's just really not something that I love. But it's really high in geraniol, one of the compounds in hops. So if you add it late in the boil, then you have that heavy geraniol load in the early fermentation. And if your yeast can do biotransformation, which is basically if your yeast has a specific enzyme in it, it can actually convert geraniol to I think geraniol to citronellol, if I remember the transition right, whatever it is. And you can get really complex flavors that way. And you can have free and bound compounds. In this case, the geraniol needs the yeast to make that conversion, I think. Anyways, I may be having some of the science of it wrong, but you get the point that like a hop may not be great right off the bat, like say you dry hop with it, but maybe you put it in the end of the boil, like Sabro, and then you can get heavy geraniol, and then have it transition into something else and create more complex flavors.
Nice.
Yeah, so, great. And a polarizing hop, Sabro seems to be
polarizing. That's the word I should have used. Yep.
Yeah. So we actually had a question that I want to ask you from somebody's watching. Daniel Katie asked, would you ever consider bottle conditioning STS pills?
Not bottle conditioning it, but now that we have our little pilot brewery and I can make small batches, I want to start krausening it. So where we would do the primary fermentation in the big tanks. And one thing about STS and Velvet Glow, I can't remember which one of you mentioned Velvet as. Was it Abel that you said? Yeah. Yes. I love Velvet. We're brewing that in about 4 weeks. It'll come back out. So you'll see it in San Diego. But we only make our lagers in our open top fermenters. And these tanks are a 1-to-1 ratio. So they're as wide as they are tall. And so you get a much different fermentation profile. It's much cleaner of a flavor and an aroma to it. And I just love what we get. So then we rack the beer to a closed top secondary fermenter. And what I'd like to eventually start doing is we make a small volume of wort. And once it hits high krausen, you pump that in to the closed top tank. And then your tank is closed, so it takes a little bit of science to get this. And then that secondary fermentation in the bung tank naturally carbonates the beer. So right now we cap the tank a little bit early, but we then finish with forced carbonation. So that's something we're going to eventually get to. So it's a form of bottle conditioning in a way, but it's in a tank though. It's in a big tank.
At least it's natural.
It's a very classic German way of doing it. So.
Nice.
And if you're not familiar with Daniel, he runs the Wild and Barrel program at Mikkeller here in San Diego.
Oh, cool.
Real good dude.
Cool. I think you just sent me some beer then.
Oh, nice. Well, we had one more comment that I should tell you guys about. Bill Schneider actually said that Fathom reopens on Saturday.
So that's wonderful news.
So make sure you guys all head to Fathom because
it's their 8th anniversary.
Yeah, they were Dennis
and I were just texting.
Nice. Yeah, they're one of the places that actually followed all the rules and were closed the entire time. So please make sure you guys go out and support them. Dennis is a wonderful person. I love the guy. So please make sure you guys go out there. And his beer list is always friggin' stellar. If you've never been, you must go. And the view from there is just gorgeous.
It's the best view of downtown.
Exactly.
I know O'Brien's is putting together some sort of we normally do a shun event, but that's not available this year. So I know they're putting some dinner together because we were emailing yesterday with Tyson about, I think it was some beer to go that'll go with a meal or something as well. So I'm sure they'll be sending out their email blast.
Speaking of those to-go beer dinners from O'Brien's, they have been one of the shining things that of a way that someone pivoted after pivoting. You take home a meal of ingredients if you want, or pre-cooked if you want, and then you can, with Tyson, makes a video and you can cook along with him in your own home. You can cook the beer dinner and then enjoy it with the beer pairings. Just a terrific original idea. And of course it came from O'Brien's and Tyson. I mean,
he's a great cook.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And O'Brien's, let's face it, from the outside, it's a strip mall. And, there's strip bars around the corner, a car dealership next door. I mean, you can go by and buy a Lexus or whatever's next door. I don't know what it is.
It's a great place to get some pho.
But they're so passionate about beer, and I remember when Jim had it, and when Tom Nickel, or Tom O'Brien as we like to call him, when he took over, they still had those giant I don't know, they were like lounge chairs,
giant green chairs, man.
Oh yeah, and
chairs,
it was like, why don't you replace these with regular chairs, and you can get another 50% more people in here, and they finally did.
Yeah.
Those things only died like 2 years ago.
Yeah, it was not that long ago. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So most breweries are often accused of chasing trends or just brewing what's hot right now. You guys have always kind of seemed to be the opposite. You kind of go to your own beat. You're kind of stuck to West Coast hoppy beers predominantly. Of course, you have done a hazy or two. Can you speak to why you aren't making multiple hazies, tons of pastry stouts, just cranking out over-fruited kettle sour can grenades? What's your overall brewing approach, and why do you offer the products you offer?
I did Mind Circus, which is our primary hazy IPA, and in San Diego, where you guys get it, it's in a bottle, not in a can.
Exactly.
And the only way we sell it in cans is direct to consumer on our website. So we do it in both formats, but we bottle it, and that's different. But that was more of a challenge to see if I could make it. And I'll tell you what, it's not as simple as a lot of people think, or other brewers, that aren't into hazy say. It's like, it's just a lazy approach. Making hazy beer is actually really hard. It's really hard to get that haze to stay permanent. And it's an interplay between the proteins and the polyphenols from the hops. And, to some degree, it's where you add the dry hops, but there's also pH becomes a part of it. And trust me, we fought that beer a lot, and we still every once in a while have a batch. It was like, what the hell? It dropped clear, and so it's never been this huge seller for us. It had a little bit of a peak about 6-7 months ago in the middle of the pandemic, and then but Pliny and Blind Pig and Happy Hops never slowed down. So it's just a part of our IPA repertoire. But I think a lot of it is just that it's what we're known for. It's easy to say, well, it's because it's what I like to, I like to drink, dry, hoppy, clear beers. For me, what a lot of hazy IPAs have that I dislike personally is there's that really heavy mouthfeel to it, because a lot of the brewers will use calcium carbonate, and the carbonate adds this fullness to it. So let's say you're making a session IPA. That's a perfect beer to add calcium carbonate, because you have such a low alcohol and you need body. You need something to lift up. And so the chloride, I said calcium carbonate. Scratch that. Calcium chloride is what I meant, but we use calcium carbonate in another beer. So anyways, it's a chloride, my bad, that the chloride lifts that mouthfeel, and it's used in the hazy IPAs to get that really almost sweet taste. And a lot of times you drink a hazy IPA that has an almost chalky note to it, and I'm just not in love with that. So even with Mind Circus, we finish it pretty dry compared to most. It's just and when we started making Happy Hops, the idea behind Happy Hops was to make what I jokingly say, make a not so hazy IPA. I wanted Happy Hops to taste like a hazy IPA, but be clean, and kind of prove to myself that you can make a beer, smell and taste like a hazy, but it'd be clean. And we do use a fair amount of chloride in that to get that fullness, but not near as much as we do in, say, like Mind Circus. So it's we get a little geeky and sciencey.
We love that around here. So what about the juggernaut of pastry stouts and dessert beers? Do you have any love for them or any intention of making them? I'm seeing your head. It's awesome.
I love that he's already shaking his head.
Don't.
That's
Next
great.
question.
Don't.
Next
That's
question.
totally cool.
I listened to another podcast that quite a bit that's out of Colorado, and he has a lot of folks on that are doing giant, big pastry stouts, and not, again, just not my personal taste, and not really into that sort of thing. I don't like overly sweet things. Like, I like rich chocolate and that sort of thing, but I mean, some of these beers are going into the barrel at like 20 Plato. That's almost that's the starting Plato of somewhere around there of Pliny the Younger, and it's incredible to me that this is a thing. But then so is dessert wine, and there's nothing wrong with dessert wine. I mean, I don't drink it myself, so I kind of think of the pastry stouts as the dessert wines of the beer industry. But it's just not something that's interested me. We make an imperial porter. We don't make an imperial stout, although we did do a Black is Beautiful, of course. But the imperial porter we make, Shadow of a Doubt, is like 10% alcohol or whatever it is, 9%, but it finishes really dry in and of itself. So, and we've done a port barrel age version of it that's going to come out in our first beer club release. But I don't personally like to drink those, and I don't think I can get behind and get inspired and have a vision for a beer that I don't like to drink, or Natalie doesn't like to drink either. So
nice.
So you don't have 250 boxes of Reese's Pieces cereal sitting in the brew house waiting to dump into the mash tun?
Lucky Charms. It's got to be Lucky Charms.
Yeah. No, I don't.
Scientific thing with the marshmallows.
I don't follow too much of this, but breweries actually dump like these things in, right?
Yeah. Whole pies, Vinnie.
Yeah.
Whole pie.
So like
anything.
if you're buying a nice pie from a local pie shop, okay, cool, it's all natural ingredients. But what freaks me out is, like, if you're making a Nilla wafer beer, I'm just using that, there's a lot of garbage in Nilla wafers that you probably shouldn't be putting in. And there is an actual TTB, that's the Tax and Trade Bureau, the federal government that oversees the beer industry. They have a list of accepted ingredients, and you start looking at, I think of this every time when I hear people talking about these other brewers talking about these beers, is like, there's a lot of crap in those cookies and cereal and whatever that is not allowed in beer. And that kind of scares me. I mean, I'm a huge safety guy, and safety's paramount. When we built our new brewery, it was all about safety. I'm all about food safety, and we have a super technical lab, and it does bother me a little that there's a generation of brewers that without mincing words have really put quality to the side, and our current sales manager, Ben's, who's just about to leave us to go start his own little business, not in beer, but he has this saying, and he's like, what happened to the day when, like, customers were pissed off when the beer wasn't right? You were mentioning, Brian, like, bulging cans and stuff like that, and like a lot of times now customers just kind of accept it and be like, oh, okay, well, the next batch is like, we just paid $20 for a 4-pack of beer, like, it should be right. And the brewery, and if there is if God forbid there is a problem with the beer, the brewery should stand behind it, whoever it is, and be like, yeah, I'll give you a refund, or whatever, and make it right. So but the quality is really important to us.
Yeah.
Thank you for holding that line. But like, I feel like the brewery shouldn't say, well, it says keep cold on the side of the can.
Yeah. And we don't mean the brewery, in
Anaheim.
Yeah, we mean we're speaking generally. Yeah,
we mean 450 North.
Yeah,
but let's move on from that. we couldn't have you on the show without talking about the only thing that is talked about in the public sector right now, which is obviously the pandemic and COVID-19. So how have you guys navigated the COVID era? Have you had to put certain of what initiatives have you guys had to put on the back burner for this year and a half or so? How are you guys getting through?
We're actually doing okay. We started out and it's crazy, and you're a business owner, you're cross-eyed and sideways, and you're not sure how to deal with it. We're very fortunate to have an amazing HR director, and so Carolyn and Natalie have really spent endless numbers of hours just kind of working through all of the piles of regulations, and then they change almost weekly, it seems. New emails coming out to the team. So first, staying on top of that. Most important was keeping our staff safe and coming up with protocols. And we're still coming up with stuff. For instance, like our new one is if we have an outside contractor, and like we're putting in a new keg line right now. And it's kind of a good time to put a new keg line in because we're not selling too many kegs, which sucks. But anyways, we want all outside vendors to not only check in at the warehouse office, but we're going to supply you with an N95 mask. We're happy to pay for to protect our staff, to know that we don't know where you've been, but you need to have an N95, just as an example. We try to not have any outside people at all. But, from a sales standpoint, we have just enough grocery distribution, through independent markets and whatnot, and all the way up to like Whole Foods, that we can, we had really good sell through there. And then we turned on direct to consumer. Now, this isn't the first time we've done direct to consumer. When Natalie and I took over the brewery from Corbel in 2004, by 2005, when we started having barrel aged beers available, Natalie would come to me and say, we're about $500 short on payroll this week. What do we have to sell? So we would put beer up and sell it online. And it was all the Shun sour barrel aged beers. So the San Francisco, Sonoma County, we all went into a lockdown a few days before the state announced it. So we had already had our direct-to-consumer up when Governor Newsom made the lockdown announcement. And then, by a month later, there was like 100 breweries in California doing direct-to-consumer. But thank God for the California Craft Brewers Association for having the foresight to have that law be in the books already, because there are still states that you can't sell direct to consumer, and these breweries are struggling big time. And I don't care if it's 10 flats of beer or cases of beer additional you're selling a week, it's better than nothing. And so the CCBA gets like mad props for being the best brewery trade organization in America.
Speaking of, you and more heavily Natalie have been involved with the CCBA for, I don't know, as long as I've been aware of craft beer.
She's just about to finish her nine-year run on the board. That's 3 terms, and she's just about to step down. And she was the president of the board for, I think, 3 or 4, however many years of that. So It's a dynamic organization.
Nice.
And are you aware? I mean, other than the obvious, what are some other difficulties that CCBA is facing currently?
Membership. It's really hard. I mean, there's a lot more breweries struggling than we think. I know the Brewers Association's numbers don't show a lot of breweries, but this winter is going to be a kind of a telltale sign. So just membership's a big deal. And, there's an inequity between wineries and breweries. I mean, now outdoor dining has been opened back up, but there was a long period there where it was okay for wineries, tasting rooms to have to be open, but breweries couldn't without the food requirement. So wineries didn't have the food requirements and breweries did. And, CCBA was fighting big time for that. And they actually ended up taking a lawsuit suing the governor, but so was the salon industry, the restaurant industry,
live entertainment, hospitality.
Yeah, I mean, hell, you guys had the strip clubs down there that made the big news.
Yay, San Diego! Yay!
Well, so how that
was certain a Padre player that did that.
Yeah, but the strip clubs actually had a unique angle in that they had made their own over-the-top standards of protection. 15 feet from guests, a full plexiglass wall in between you and the entertainers, and no cash, all just phone. So like someone's making it rain with their iPhone like this, I guess. I don't know. And so, their unique approach where they actually brought some science to the lawsuit, I thought was very smart. At the same time, the difficulty of our government trying to manage this is insane, coupled with the fact that we have this weird division in our public about people that take it seriously and those that don't.
I wouldn't want to be a politician.
Not at all, or a business owner, and you're one of them. But I can't. I feel for everyone involved that's on either side, a business owner or the government that's trying to help us get through it. Luckily, theoretically, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Vaccinations are rolling out. Hopefully, the supply of vaccinations can continue to wrap up. Hopefully, in 2 weeks, we really get the third one with Johnson & Johnson getting approved, which will really speed things up because that's a single dose vaccination. So, anyways, hopefully we're near the end of this. But
absolutely.
Speaking of reaching the end, once we're back to some semblance of normal life and the virus is under control, what can we expect when it's okay for us to come visit Windsor again?
I can't wait to get the tours back going. It is a beautiful facility. We already had a great self-guided tour that we built into the brewery. I talked about that pipe bridge with all the utilities. Well, above it is a walkway that runs the length of the brewery, and you can look down into everything. And then we have an amazing guided tour. And there's 3 bars along the way. There's one on the brew house deck, and you stand. Our brew house has a basement as well. So it's if anyone's there aren't any breweries in San Diego that have this. The only breweries there's only a few breweries in California that have a basement that you just have the dome. Sierra Nevada, I think Mendocino, and Anchor, of course. Well, but you start there, and you have a bar there. You get your taste. Ingredients. Our tour guides talk about ingredients. The brew house, our lab is right there, and then you go up a spiral staircase. Then you're above the whole way, and you walk by and you look into the yeast room and the open top fermenters and the closed top fermenters, the packaging hall. And at the packaging hall, there's another tasting bar, and it's got the beer that we're bottling that day, or whatever the freshest beer is that was most recently bottled. So you could walk through and get like Pliny that's like an hour old or something, and then you loop through and you end up in the Funky Brewery, which is a totally different feel and vibe. You walk through and you look down at all the barrels, and you're in the climate controlled, so it's about 58 degrees Fahrenheit, and you walk up this beautiful staircase, and you walk through this almost like abbey-like door, and then you don't know what's behind it, and then you suddenly see this 13-foot square cool ship, and then there's the third tasting bar where you get to taste a sour barrel-aged beer, much like Intinction Pinot, like we had earlier. So I really miss that because I love that, and we do funky tours that I give a lot of those tours myself, and those are something we'll pick back up at some point too.
Wow.
Brian, you're on mute.
Lame.
Brian, you're on mute.
Sorry, so I'm writing my mute button because we do have a little echo and little background noises, so I try to keep myself as quiet as possible. But one of the things that I really enjoyed about visiting the brew pub in Santa Rosa, which is the only facility I've ever been to, we went on an epic beercation with 12 of my friends, all crammed in one van, 1,800 miles, 11 breweries, visited actual vineyard, had Vision wine cellars. I don't know if you know them or not, but they're really cool people.
I know the name.
And one of the things that I really found iconic about the brew pub in Santa Rosa was just the incredible camaraderie of your staff and the guests. It was like we all knew each other, and we were all locals, even though we were just a bunch of idiots from San Diego. They were like, we have to wait 20 minutes in line to get in a brewery? What? This was a random Tuesday in between Christmas and New Year's. But worth the wait. hands down.
The brew pub in San Diego in Santa Rosa has this great like lived-in, comfortable feel. It's like that your favorite pair of jeans or a T-shirt that just has a good feel. It's lived in and it's nice. And Windsor, we're still working towards that. So, and it's totally different food and experience, and we meant it to be that way.
Well, can you still get the world's largest taster tray?
Oh yeah,
the board of everything.
18 to 21 beers. Yeah, one time, I don't know, it's probably 6-7 years ago. It was on the top 10 Instagram food items in America or the world or something. It was crazy. It was up there with like Voodoo Donuts and like from Portland and stuff.
Yeah.
It was like, well, that's pretty cool. So, but yeah, we still in normal times we still do that. So yeah, where most breweries will do like, you can pick 5 beers or whatever. You can do every beer that's on the board, and it's the board holds 18, but sometimes there's one stacked on it because we have extra beers.
When I visited, there was 2 stacked there, so I guess it was 20. But
20.
It's like a rite of passage for anyone that is.
Yeah,
road trekking to your facility is you gotta do it. You taste the rainbow, taste them all.
Yeah.
Really cool. So it's time for us to go through our number 2s. Let's go backwards. Let's start with Mr. Hernandez. Your second favorite Russian River beer of all time, sir.
All right. Well, much like Sanctification, I really like that there's a different taste experience often with this as well, just by nature of what it is. But Beatification. The range of flavors that are capable within that framework are so great, and it's extremely refreshing and tasty, and just something you can sit and contemplate while you're drinking it. I've sat at O'Brien's many a times through the years and just enjoyed that on Shun weekend, and does not disappoint. Really nice, and it seems to encapsulate a lot of the things that you are so good at over the years. All those years of experience are all happening in that glass typically.
Yeah. And if you are one of the few people that got batch 2 or batch 3, you love it as well. Estella.
All right. I got Jess's opinion because I obviously have my ale tales, and hers was Consecration.
Mm-hmm.
That's her number 2. We had the same number 3, but my number 2 is Blind Pig. I love Blind Pig. I will order it if it's on wherever I'm at, and it's just one of my go-to beers. So
thank you.
It is a perfect West Coast IPA, and I doubt it will ever be exceeded or surpassed. Really, Abel.
My number 2, because I went from the Pilsner, now I'm going to the Porter. It's the one that Randy talked about earlier, the Shadow of a Doubt. Like you said, it's got that nice rich chocolate, but it's not like overwhelmingly sweet. It's not like crazy, like fruity or whatever, all the adjuncts that you were talking about. No Lucky Charm feels into that one. It's just straight. It's just straight to the point. And it's like you said, it's got that dry finish, and I've never complained, never had any issues with that beer at all.
Nice.
I also believe it was the first beer brewed at Windsor. Was the porter?
Well, it was. We made a version of our Russian River Porter called Windsor Porter.
Oh, okay.
That was there. Yeah. And Shadow of a Doubt is named after the Hitchcock movie Shadow of a Doubt, which was filmed here in Sonoma County, and the label is a depiction of the train station in downtown Santa Rosa.
And that was one of my other favorite things about that beer, because my mom was a big horror buff, but we used to watch all the Alfred Hitchcock movie shows, the Twilight Zones. We used to watch horror movies all the time, and when I saw that one, I was like, that is awesome. That was it. I'm like, that is like one of my top favorite porters right now.
And I agree that and the Windsor version, terrific.
Thanks.
So my number 2 was also Blind Pig, but I also wanted to relay another anecdote that I have heard in other homebrew forums, is that there's very little difference between the recipe for Blind Pig and Pliny. Meaning really Pliny's just kind of bumping it up and adding a bunch of sugar to get to the double IPA level. Is that accurate?
To a degree, except we drop 20% or so of the base 2-row malt out of Blind Pig and replace it with an English malt called Best Pale malt from Simpson malt from England. And Simpson is it's a rich, full-bodied malt from a mouthfeel standpoint, but it doesn't go all the way to like Maris Otter or Golden Promise. It gives you these big biscuity notes, and then that would actually get in the way of the hop notes. And I love Best Pale. It's one of my favorite malts. And so that's the malt difference. But otherwise, yeah, we're just pretty much giving it a little bit more sugar. There's a little bit more malt in Pliny, if you took the sugar out, but that's a good way to describe it.
It's cool that it's even true. Like the first time I heard it, I was like, "Yeah, right, you're full of shit." But it's actually kind of cool that it's a true anecdote that is following you around in the ether.
The thing about Blind Pig that's interesting too is it's only 1 pound per barrel dry hop, which isn't that much hop in this day and age,
especially recently. Yeah.
Henry at Monkish is a big Blind Pig fan, and he's always texting me. He's drinking it. He's like, "Are you sure this is only 1 pound per barrel?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's a pound per barrel dry hop."
Mr. 8 and 10 pounds per barrel on the dry hop on the hazies. It's an amazing beer. And I think you've spoken to this a little bit. Is that your new facility is incredibly efficient now? Are you getting a better hop utilization from Windsor?
Yeah, we're a much greater hop utilization. There's more hop aroma coming out of the beers there, and it's just with nicer, more modern equipment. I also built in to the bottom on the cone of the backside of the tank. I built a port in to all these tanks, or had it designed in, and then we have a portable mixer that we can move from tank to tank. And after we make the dry hops, we can insert this portable mixer, and the valve has a ball valve on it, so it's a core opening, and so you can. The mixer has this, it's a long shaft, and on the ends an impeller that's flexible. So you push it in and you sanitize it and all, and then you turn it on, and we can turn that entire tank and mix the dry hops into the tank, and we actually get more out of the hops. A lot of breweries will mix the tank with a pump, or they'll bubble CO2 through. I don't like bubbling hop CO2. Yeah, I don't like bubbling CO2. Like Sierra Nevada will use their torpedoes, but I don't like using CO2 because you're stripping, you can potentially strip CO2. I don't like using a pump, because if your pump has a bad seal, you could be introducing oxygen. So this was a design that I designed into all the tanks, but not something you can add later. You have to do it when the tank is being built. So.
Yeah, I can imagine that. And it's really cool, of course, that you have added some unique features. And the only way you could do that would be if you built your own brewery from the ground up. So congrats on that, man.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm opening the beer.
Yes. So for beers 3 and 4, we're drinking them simultaneously. I don't know whose idea this was, whether it came from Brandon or it came from you, sir. I don't care. This is one of the greatest moments on the show ever. We are going to drink side by side the original Pliny the Elder, along with the 2-stage double dry hop Pliny the Elder, colloquially known as Pliny for President.
Yeah,
depending on the season.
It was Pliny for President, and so in the brewery we call it DDH, just for double dry hop. That's the acronym on the brew log. So when like Adrian is brewing this in the brewery, it would say DDH, not PTE. And the idea behind Pliny for President was we'd always done this fun campaign with just T-shirts and hats every 4 years. And last year, 2020, Natalie said to me, "Oh, we should like do a Pliny the Elder canned version with a new piece of artwork from our artist Jason." And I said, well, if we're going to do that, why don't we? I've always thought about doing Pliny with more dry hops, and so these recipes are exactly the same on the hot side in the kettle.
What?
But they change on the dry hop. And so Pliny the Elder, the regular, gets 2 pounds per barrels, and then double dry hop, or what it was Pliny for President, gets 4 pounds per barrels. But when you drink double dry hop, it probably tastes less bitter. And that's because and Natalie's coming to get some double dry hop right now. That's because when you dry hop with a heavy hop load, the hops actually absorb some of the isomerized alpha acids, and it actually will reduce your bitterness because the hops you're dry hopping with are actually absorbing the isomerized alpha acids. The isomerized alpha acids are what bitter beer typically. And then the other thing is that when you're adding a crap load of hops like most breweries add, you're getting what are called humulinones, which are oxidized alpha acids, and they give you a really dry finish, but it's a different perceived bitterness than like bitterness in a beer that's getting it from the kettle. So they're the same base beer, but get treated different on the cold side.
If I tasted these blind, I would not peg them as the same base beer. It's amazing the transformation that's happening with the double dry hop when you're getting it side by side. The original's coming off drier, crisper, and far more bitter compared to the double dry hop. And I've had Pliny for President several times. Yeah. It's weird just having this comparison in person live. You can really, really pick out the nuances that are different. The hop profile in DDH, so much more pungent, in your face. Yeah. Citrus, tropical, dank, all at the same time. So I have a question. Really the exact same hops? There's no difference in the hops.
So on the hot side, it's identical. The first hop edition, identical. The only thing that changes is that DDH gets 2 more pounds of hops, and they're the same hops that are in the first dry hopping edition, just in a slightly different proportion. Yeah. And I'm thinking of a couple things right now when I think of this beer. The first is not from the technical brewing side, but it's from the standpoint that we were talking about, pandemic and COVID and just how difficult it is. We lucked out on Planning for President. That was a godsend, whether you believe in God or not. That it was a huge help to us financially. We brewed a lot of Planning for President through the pandemic, and it filled a huge void in our production schedule where draft had gone away, and we were like so indebted to all of our loyal customers who supported us through that. And I think it's why, like, today selling out of Younger so fast and having so many upset customers, why it like really shakes Natalie and I to the bone, and why we truly take that very personal, because like we have these amazing folks that spend their hard-earned money to support us. So but then after it was obvious that the presidential race is over. We can't keep making Pliny for President. It would look kind of lame. So we had this idea to create this new, but I think it's a beautiful label on the can with the stainless steel look to it. And again, Jason Roberson, our artist, he doesn't work for us directly. He's a third-party guy. Jason used to be the art director at Sierra Nevada, and I met him almost 10 years ago when we started the Brux project, our collaboration with Sierra. Brandon, you would love that beer. It's a Brett finished beer. Mm-hmm. And after he left to do his own thing, we were one of his first customers, and now he almost does all of our labels and artwork. But he just created this amazing can. But then the second thing I was thinking about from the technical standpoint is there's one other difference, Brian, and that's that the first dry hop on DDH goes in on day 3, so it goes in mid-fermentation.
That's pretty early. That's more of a hazy IPA technique.
It is, yeah. And whereas regular Pliny, we finish fermentation, we cap the tank, let it sit for a couple days. A lot of yeast falls to the cone. We pull out as much as we can. We dry hop it, and dry hop goes on, so on and so forth. With DDH, we add the dry hops on day 3, trying to get some of that biotransformation. That's that enzymatic reaction from the enzyme beta-glucosidase that's in the yeast, and trying to get some of this transition from, like I was saying earlier, like geraniol to linalool, or whatever the transitions that happen. And then 3 days go by, and then we add the second dry hop. So as the second dry hop's going in, fermentation is just finished. From a brewing standpoint, it's a pain in the butt because we can't reuse the yeast. Once you add the hops, you can't pull the yeast from it. So, we actually use a dry yeast when we make Mind Circus, because it's easier to just have cubes of dry New England yeast sitting around, because it's an odd schedule, because it's not something we brew a lot of, and we don't always know when we're going to brew it. And so it's easier to just use a dry yeast and just hydrate and use it. But for our regular beers, we're using California ale yeast regular. I make the when I say regular beer like that, I make the hazy beer sound like the redheaded stepchild. But we use White Labs California ale yeast for our most of our other beers. So.
And thank you for supporting our homegrown yeast bank that turned into be a worldwide success. Who knew all the way back then that a guy screwing around with his college lab can turn that into millions and millions and millions of dollars. It's pretty amazing. And
drug dealing pays off. Drug dealing pays off.
Yes. Every shipment comes with its own paper bag.
So before we get too far away, I just want to point out that you happen to Vinny, you happen to attract a certain crowd.
Yeah.
And that crowd is Chris Ketchum and Jeff Swem and Jeff Whitaker from Beard and Chuck Silva. And so to all the brewery owners and brewers that are watching right now, thank you.
Yeah.
And it's just this admiration we all have for you in the industry and community.
Yeah.
We're incredibly appreciative for taking the time to hang out with us, and thank you to all of you guys who are joining us over here on the side. But this is actually a serious question. Chris wants to know, is that dry yeast Cephal S33?
It's not. It is Lallemand New England IPA yeast, I believe is the name. I don't know if there's a number to it, but it is Lallemand New England IPA.
Excellent. So
we were using a London 3 version. I can't remember which supplier it was coming from, but again, it was just more of because we dry hop our Mind Circus at day 3, and so we don't reuse the yeast because of that, and so it's just easier to have a stock of yeast. Whereas with double dry hop, previous Pliny for President, we have California ale yeast in almost every other tank for the most part, other than when we're using a New England yeast or our lager yeast. So we have plenty of places to pull from. So even though we can't reuse DDH yeast, it's not a big deal because we have keep in mind, we have 12 fermenters at the big brewery, and then we have 8 fermenters at Santa Rosa. And we'll often buy a pitch of yeast, and this is actually not often, it's what we do. We'll buy a small pitch of yeast, grow it up in Santa Rosa, and then do a couple fermentations and get enough yeast and then bring that to Windsor. That's enough to make a single batch 75 barrel in Windsor, and then take that yeast and we can make a 300 barrel batch in Windsor. So quadruple batch.
300 barrels.
Right. Batch.
So that's how I feel like when I go to Sierra Nevada, though, or like that.
I have a 5 barrel.
Yeah. You have a brew house, Estella. Yeah. Don't look at it as a limiting thing. You have a brew house.
This is your next goal, Stella. That's your next goal.
Right.
And then one big giant leap.
Yeah. When I was mentioning all the brewery owners that you've attracted, Vinny, I forgot to mention Carmen from Border X. So
nice.
That's great. That's
nice.
Great. At least 6.
Thank you all for being on.
That's great. So we've mentioned San Diego a lot because all we care about is what applies to us. But you really have a lot of ties in our community that from your time living here. Who are some of the members of our local brewing community that you have tight friendships and professional relationships with that we might recognize?
I already mentioned him earlier, but probably one of our closest friends in the industry is Tommy Arthur, and he's a close friend. We go back, to talking. We were talking about the pandemic on and off for the last hour and a half here, and so I think Tommy and I texted almost daily. We were a bit of a shoulder to cry on each other's shoulders through some of the early days of the pandemic, bouncing ideas around and whatnot. And how are you dealing with this? What do you think about that? This is what's going on up here. This is what's going on down there. And we still text quite a bit and call each other quite a bit and talk a lot. And Natalie and I are real good friends with Chris Kramer from Carl Strauss, and Natalie sat on the board with him. But I remember when they opened the location that unfortunately they just closed there in Sorrento Valley, La Jolla, whatever they officially call it. And he invited all the local brewers to come for the the mock dinner. And there was 4 or 5 breweries. There was Pizza Port, there was Callahan's, There was Carl Strauss, but they don't count. Skip probably had PB Brewing, and about that time. And maybe Red Kettle was open in Encinitas at the time, but not sure of the exact time. But there weren't that many brewers, and so Chris included us in like the San Diego brewers because there weren't enough brewers to invite. So we've known Chris a long time and become really great friends with them. And Natalie was on the board, CCBA board with Chris, still is right now. So, and they're both terming off together. So they came on at the same time and they're terming off nine years for each of them. So
those are big shoes.
Those are two that come to mind, but many more. I mean, Greg Cook was a customer of ours at Blind Pig. I poured him the last growler of double IPA second anniversary. I was a customer at Home Brew Mart before, Jack and Yusuf opened Ballast Point. I can still remember Jack, Yusuf, and I think their third partner was Eric, if I remember the name correctly. And they came up to Blind Pig and they checked it out. I'm like, oh, it's easy. Oh, you can do this. And so
it's like when someone tells you having a kid is fun.
I take credit for them selling selling the brewery for $1 billion or whatever it was. It was it was different though back then. It was so few people and selling beer was really hard. I mean, selling an IPA like Blind Pig IPA was 92 bittering units, and it was like licking the rust off a tin can. And I can't believe we even sold any of it. And so, and now it's like it's I don't want to say it's easy because you have all these craft brewers that are competing against each other. But back then, it was just convincing any bar or restaurant to take one, craft beer. And if there was Sierra Nevada or Sam Adams on, you weren't going to knock that off. So.
I hear that. And now 30 years later, it's a little easier for you. So, it's not like you didn't earn what you've done. You've built your entire empire, and I hope you continue to have, generational success. And I hope that similar to Sierra Nevada, that you're setting yourself up for 100-year time frame that you'll be open. So
we'll have to see if our cats can brew because we don't have kids.
There you go. But that doesn't.
Everyone knows that Natalie and I are crazy cat ladies. So.
We're with you.
I
have furry children. I took extreme measures not to have actual children. So I'm on your team. But speaking of ourselves again, because that's what we do. We, since Windsor is open, we have been very fortunate to have regular deliveries of Pliny, Blind Pig, the Stout, Damnation, and several of the other beers. Happy Hops, STS Pills. These are beers that now that we can almost find continuously in our local bottle shops, especially Vine and Vine, which is closest to me. Will that continue? Do you have any plans of expanding how much beer you send down to us and our city?
No, it's what you're getting now is about where we're at. I mean, we work really hard. Freshness is a big deal for us. I mean, I'm proud that we were one of the first breweries to date code based on bottling, not a Best By date. And
Thank you.
We give the consumer the option. We have 2 reps in Southern California, and they're not really salespeople; they're brand ambassadors, and their job is to make sure the beer is fresh. If there's an account that's having an issue, we try to work with them. If for some reason it's not working out, we'll switch accounts. We mandate that they store our beer cold. We have places that sometimes have issues, but we try to work with them. And so freshness is a big deal, but freshness has become a big deal for all IPA brewers, most IPA brewers. It does pain me to walk into a store and see IPA sitting out warm, but and all the brewers that are on right now, watching, listening, they're shaking their heads, I know. And it's, that's something that we're really proud that we were an early adopter of, and with Elder and Blind Pig when we started bottling those years ago. And it's important to have fresh beer. I mean, if your customers are going to spend their hard-earned money on your beer. You gotta do it the right way. And we're fanatical. I say it's our religion is TPO. TPO is total package oxygen. And one of the things that is most understood by not just the consumers, but by the public or by the brewers is the difference between dissolved oxygen and total package oxygen. And dissolved oxygen is the beer that's in the beer in the tank, but total package oxygen is what's in the whole bottle.
Yeah.
And before I opened it, and so it includes the headspace, and it's the most misunderstood thing, and it's hard to test it because it's like a $50,000 piece of equipment, and you can take your $10,000 or $25,000 dissolved oxygen meter and pipe it to a bottle and pierce it, but that still isn't giving you TPO. That's giving you what's called shaken DO, and it's still not the same. And so we're fanatical. And in 2020. Our average total package oxygen for our bottled beer was 22 parts per billion, which is really low.
Did you say billion?
Yeah, 22 parts per billion.
Okay, so
the industry standard gets more like 50 to 100 and sometimes more. But that, and then cans will always have a lower shelf stability from an initial freshness standpoint and a higher TPO, because the can has a much wider lid, and when the lid goes on, there's more oxygen as the lid falls on as it's getting seamed on. The flip side is if your beer is going to sit for a long time, cans are probably better because there's no oxygen ingress. What's amazing is that when there's a bottle cap on a crown on the bottle, air can actually get up and go in. It's a slow process. But for like ultra fresh beer, if you know your beer is going to sell fresh, bottles are actually better. Consumers just love cans right now, but you can't get as low. You can never get as low of a TPO on cans as you do bottles. We use a mobile canner for the canning that we do for our direct to consumer, but we're just about to get delivered a new little 10-head rotary can line that will give us better lower oxygen pickup, and thus giving us lower total package oxygen, or TPO. And that's just something we're fanatical about. Like, you can never be good enough there. Our goal is zero. We'll never hit zero, but
it's not possible to hit zero. But the numbers,
that's our religion.
The numbers he's mentioning, 21 parts per billion. There are many breweries that celebrate getting 20 parts per million dissolved oxygen as a success. That's million. He's at a whole other zero. That's pretty good, man.
It's pretty bad if you're at parts per million. Like, most breweries are probably at a 100 or 200 parts per billion. But and there's a lot of breweries that are trying to work their way down. But if you have a DO meter that you can pierce your bottle or can with, and you get that shaken DO, and let's say you're at like 20, you can add about 30 or 40 parts per billion, and that will give you there's an equation you can do,
of course,
but you'll always have more than that. And when we got our TPO tester years ago, we ran a lot of tests, and we kind of have an equation, and we knew that, you'll get about 20 to 40 more parts per billion. I remember talking to Mitch about this when he was at Stone, when they got theirs too. So.
And you mentioned getting a really small 10-head rotary canner. Was it $200,000 or $300,000?
It was
this little canner you
bought. It's right in the middle.
Yeah,
we're buying it, and actually we're buying it in conjunction with Sierra Nevada. So we're each getting the same one. The first one's into America, and I'll admit it. I negotiated the deal for Ken. I could finally do something.
Wow.
I say that jokingly because he's given so much to the industry. Every brewer that's watching is shaking their head like, yeah,
everything. He's given everything to the industry.
And the brand is Guy, and it's repped by this company Prospero, and Prospero is our two bottling lines. Our funky bottling line is Prospero, our regular bottling line is Prospero, and then we're adding a can line. So it just turned out that we were both in the market for a little small 10-head canner. So I'm really excited to get that, because most small breweries, unfortunately, have to use these inline canners, whether they own it or they're mobile. And if you have an inline canner and say it's 4 or 6 heads, Estella, do you guys can?
Not yet.
No. Okay.
I'm this big.
They just started.
When you can on this line, you have the cans moving in like linear in sync, and so but you have 4 or 6 heads, but you have one seamer, and so there's no way that the first can, the second, third, fourth, they're all in different timing, and so like some cans are exposed more to air than not, and so and they're great because they're inexpensive, and we've come up with really good ways to reduce the TPO on those, but it's not consistent, and so we're so looking forward to this little rotary line that we invested in. But you know what, we did it in the middle of a pandemic. It was like, it's not the best time to be investing in equipment because everything's so uncertain, but it's quality, and like we'll do anything for quality.
Also, like you mentioned,
I opened my brewery during a pandemic.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel for you then.
What are you 6 months old now? 4 months?
Something like 3 or 4, right?
That's like 4 months. It's like
I would like to ask one quick question. First off, like everybody who's a fan of Russian River, we appreciate the fanaticism that you put into freshness, quality. It's kind of like a benchmark that you set for a lot of other people who try to accomplish it, and they find out just how hard it is to do that. But you kind of have this luxury in that because you have been so fanatical about it and created great beers, great recipes, that your beer really doesn't sit too long anyway.
No.
So you probably don't, by those standards, you probably don't have to do it as much as you do, but it's great that you do. So given the fact that your beer sells so fast, and I'm glad this is virtual because then tomatoes can't hit me, how is it that you keep your prices so affordable? Because I think that's something we all really appreciate too. It's such an affordable luxury to have your great hoppy beers.
Yeah.
And I'd just like to know, is it an ethos where you're like, we're going to keep this so that everybody can enjoy it, or what's driven that through the years?
Hey, yeah, honestly, I'm not sure if they are affordable. They're just are who we are, and it works into our business model. And we didn't raise our prices when we built the new brewery. They've stayed the same, and we haven't had a price increase in a while, and we're really sensitive about that, because if you overprice your IPA, your beers are going to sit on the shelf. But at the end of the day, our beers are still they're expensive, but I think if you make quality beer, your customer is going to follow. And but I also think it's important that if a brewery, and we certainly do this, if there's old beer on the shelf, that we'll go in, take it back, which means the distributor has to take it back, which means that we basically need to reimburse the distributor, however, that all flows through, because we don't expect the distributor to eat that, so that's a really important point for consumers to understand, that, it's the breweries that really care about quality will put their money where their mouth is and come through like that. But no, I think it's whatever we do. If you think it's nice pricing, it just fits well for us. And we don't when we have profit, we're obviously paying off our big loan payment, but we're also reinvesting in the brewery. We're putting in a new can line, putting a new keg racker, buying stuff that makes our beer better. So putting in the pilot brewery to be innovative, that sort of thing.
What the hell is a keg racker for the people listening that have no idea what you just said?
Keg racker is a technical term for just a keg cleaner and filler.
Yes, exactly. It's an automated cleaner, and then it goes over to the fill side and does it. Do you have the cool robotic arm that shoves it down the line?
No, that would be cool. I don't have one of those.
They're really cool. If you have a chance. If you have a chance to visit one of the few breweries that have those robot filler, the one that I visited was Dogfish Head. Wow, their kegging line was incredibly impressive. But,
when you start buying German equipment, you go to this event in Germany called Brau or Drink Tech. Drink Tech's every 4 years, and that's in Munich, and then Brau is in Nuremberg. And when we're at Brau, we went to this, you're just like everything under the sun. It's literally like 10 buildings that are each the size of a football field selling brewing equipment at Brau, and it's really cool. And so one of the companies was selling a robotic arm to, lift kegs, move cases, whatever. But their display was a bar, and they had a robot pouring a beer. It was awesome.
Oh, that's really cool.
And I was like, oh, cool. You can still, you have a brewery, like a bar normally, a a tasting room or something.
Yes,
it's like you could almost replace your bartenders. So
I am the bartender, so I hope not.
Don't do that, Estella. Don't do that, Estella. Please
I'm
don't.
like, no,
Might not
Speak
fall under
yourself out of
the
a
heading
robot,
of affordable luxury.
no, but I do appreciate you asking that question, Brian, because I was like, I wonder what that is. Low key, I don't want to ask.
It's like a canning line for kegs.
Yeah.
You know, but if you haven't seen one at some of the bigger production breweries, Sierra Nevada has a very nice one to look at too. Yeah. It's very impressive equipment. If you're a geek like me that likes equipment and manufacturing processes and things like that. So what have we not asked you, Vinny, that you want to talk about tonight? Because we're kind of reaching the end. I just want to make sure that we have met your needs.
This has been a lot of fun. I mean, I've been joking about it through the night, but today was a little bit of a rough day. I mean,
I bet it was.
We did not see 110,000 people waiting to buy what was 8,000 boxes of a mixed pack with 4 bottles of Younger. And I literally, when, after it sold out, and Natalie and Lisa helps Natalie with our social media, and they were like, oh my God, like the hundreds of, and I'm like, okay, I got our IT guy, hundreds of emails coming in and social media, blah, blah, blah. And so I grabbed our IT guy, Joe, and I said, hey, point the info at my computer. And I just started, that's all I did today. And there's a lot of people that were like, why don't you just put like 1 or 2 bottles in, and then of Younger, and then instead of having 8,000, it could be 6,000. Because it's like we have to print like every one of these shipping labels, and then next week we're gonna start. So we let's see, today is Thursday, and then Monday. So tomorrow we bottle the Funky Fooder Cherry beer, which is a new beer that goes into the pack. Today we bottle the Happy Hops that goes into the pack. STS was bottled a couple weeks ago, which sometimes needs a little bit of age. And then Monday we bottle the Elder that goes into the pack. Tuesday we bottle the Younger, or Wednesday, whatever it is. And then we start building the boxes. It's going to take us like 10 days to take all of these beers on their own and then pack them into shipping boxes. And like 8,000 is going to take us 10 days or whatever it's going to take us. And like, I couldn't even imagine 16,000. Yeah. And so we did not expect it to be like this. And like I said earlier, like Natalie and I take this really personal, and it really like hurts us. And in 2010, when Pliny the Younger went virtual, and we had like, I still remember that day like it was yesterday. We were going to put it on tap the first Friday in February, like we always do. Like no one cared about Younger before 2010. We would have it on till our anniversary, which was in early April. And
I remember many times getting it in March.
Yeah, one time we did a April Fool's joke, and that we released Procrastination, which is, if you've been to the pub, there's always on the coming soon is Procrastination. And some guy drove all the way from Bakersfield. Oh, and thankfully we still had Younger on, so this was in early April. But anyways, so like that day, we sold all of the Younger in 8 hours. And Natalie and I got home and we looked at each other and we're like, God, I feel dirty, because it was like really bad customer service. I feel a little bit like that today, but we'll work through it. And we're not going to do this again. I mean, this was a COVID thing, but I think I said a lot in a lot of emails today, because, of course I did have a basic script, but, it was like, we don't take ourselves that serious. And like, I know that Russian River has a strong following, but I was saying to our team yesterday, I'm like, I don't think like 8,000, like that's a lot of like boxes of beer to sell. And like, there's not going to be that many people. Like maybe we'll sell like 6,000. So I always underestimate how we
2 minutes,
how we look at these things. So, but anyways, if anyone's like watching and listening that didn't get beer, I apologize.
Yeah,
I'm one.
So I'm
but I understand.
Yeah. So I'm just going to ask for everybody, is there going to be any more available? Because I know you guys were watching to make sure that it wasn't like the same address got shipped more than one box. Yeah. Those are going to get kicked out. I know a lot of people were saying, oh, well, bots bought a bunch of them.
Yeah, we had already worked on like the bots part of it. We had our team spent a lot of time with our e-commerce company Shopify. To make sure that, I mean, they have that software already built in, and but our team is going through every order, and we're cross-referencing stuff, and so no, I mean, and a lot of the emails that I responded to was like, this was artificially created. You guys did this on purpose. And it was like, no, like, wow. But we did not expect 110,000 people to be like logging. And Natalie and I didn't know that until after Joe, our IT guy, brought that information to us, because he's looking on the backside, looking at all the analytics. And we don't plan to make, I mean, Pliny the Younger is a once a year release. And, the idea was to, do this release this way, and it kind of takes the place of the on-premise part. There's no draft distribution. If we would have known a month ago or 5 weeks ago, whenever we first brewed Younger, if we would have known that the state was going to reopen, like with outdoor dining, it would be a little different. But at the time, and when you think back to early January, because Younger is now about a 1 month brewing process, so there was no way. We're coming off Christmas and New Year's. The ICU bed thing was happening. The numbers were just out of control everywhere. And then like out of the blue, what was like 5 days ago, that just like suddenly that everything's going to open back up. But what it turned out was that the governor's office had some equations and stuff that weren't being shown to the public. And that's probably why everything opened up so fast. I mean, the ICU beds didn't go from, San Francisco or Bay Area, which we're a part of, went from like 4% to 26% overnight of open. From 4%, we had 4% open ICU beds to 26%. Like, you can't tell me that just happened overnight.
Yeah, it just happened overnight.
There was, and it happened everywhere in the state, but yet, they said 15% was where you would open, but Sacramento opened at 8%. And so it was really confusing, and there's just no way we could have, tankfuls of Younger. So we just said no draft, but we'll do this direct to consumer, but we did not expect it to be like this. So. Right.
Okay. So another question from everybody. Are you guys going to release any more merch? Because I know a lot of the merch that people wanted. I bought an umbrella. I will say that, because I need an umbrella.
We are, I think.
But
I
kind of need a mask.
Yeah, I think Natalie was talking to our gift shop team about ordering not everything, because there's certain things you can't get fast. Yeah. But we are going to do a few of the items and get some more. So, and we're so appreciative of everyone who bought merchandise yesterday and today, because we put the merch on yesterday and the beer today, and if there's people out there that didn't get beer today, but they bought merch yesterday because they wanted to have it already set up, and we're happy to refund that if they don't want the merch. We're totally good with that. We get it.
Are you kidding me? Come on, I need the umbrella.
If you happen tomorrow's one of the few rainy days in San Diego. She needs that umbrella.
I need the umbrella.
If you happen to buy the Pliny the Younger salami that we had made, it's fantastic.
I saw you said that, but
it's really good. It's really good salami. It's with a local butcher, and they use an heirloom breed of pigs that have a higher fat content to meat, and it's just so good, and it's really spicy. It's great with IPAs and spicy thing.
I'll make a note.
While I know that there are
adding that to my cart, thank you.
Well, I know there's at least 3 of us on the show that had it in our cart, did get it, and countless people in the comments thread. I want to say your honesty and transparency about the weight it put on your guys' shoulders. I think for everyone listening, certainly helps them feel a little better. Also, let's remember, everyone, it's beer. It's gonna be okay.
And the pandemic.
It's gonna be okay. Most of the people that didn't get it have had Younger before.
That's what I was thinking. I was so sad today. I was like, it's the first time in 6 years I haven't had this beer, and then I was like, There's worse things.
Exactly.
Thank you for saying that.
The first time in 6 years, Estella.
Yeah,
We're gonna live. We're gonna be okay.
Maybe 7 years, but still, I was like, I was so mad, and then I was like, it's okay. It's all right.
It's silly. It's silly that we get so wrapped up in these releases that what I find is silly from the public side is the people that act like that you, Vinny, personally, you owe them the right to buy your beer.
Yeah.
You don't owe them anything. You made as much as you could make, and it's not your fault. You sold it all in 2.5 minutes.
You know what? To me, honestly, the way that you guys handled it, you handled it the best way possible during a pandemic, and I think that's the thing that people need to remember. I mean, you don't get it every year. That's just a fact. If you happen to get it, great. And, it didn't happen for you this year. Okay, well, there's always next year, and that's the way it is. Like you said, Brian, it's beer. So
I ran the number. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's fine.
If we were to have putting the ability to pack 110,000, repacks, putting that aside, if we would have done 110,000 mix packs, because that's how many people were on wanting to buy, it would have been 19. What was it? It was 4 times as much. It was 1,914 barrels of Younger alone.
2,000 barrels.
And we normally, so last year, Pliny the Younger release, so 2020, we made about 475 barrels. So it was 4 times as much beer as we would have normally made in a regular Pliny the Younger year, where we would have draft distribution out to all of our accounts, and then what we would use at our 2 pubs on draft, plus what we sell in bottles on premise.
Yeah. So, and of course, because
it's an impossible number.
I was going to say, because the world is so crazy, if you brewed 2,000 barrels, you would have sold 500. It's just how it is. Damnation if you don't, and damnation if you do.
That was good.
That was a good one.
I know your time is short, Vinny. You've spent a lot of time with us. Last thing before we let you go, best social media channels to keep up with everything Russian River.
Well, Facebook at Russian River Brewing. I'm looking at a note here.
That's cool.
This isn't my forte. And then Instagram is at Russian River Brewing Official. And then Twitter is at Russian River BC. But I think it's pretty easy to find it, wherever. And I think if you just go to our website, RussianRiverBrewing.com, or if that's too long for you, rrbeer.com gets you there too. All those things are on there as well. So
I cannot express my appreciation for the time you have spent with us tonight at all. I lack the words. You have been like a white whale for me to have on a podcast. I've been podcasting for 5 years, and I'm about to retire, and I am incredibly, incredibly appreciative for you spending tonight with us, and blown away by the box you sent us, man.
Thank you.
Who's your replacement?
Thank you for everything you have done for craft
Brian,
beer.
Who's your replacement?
There is no replacement for Brian.
It's just
Kim Jordan from New Belgium once taught me that. I was on a board of directors with her for the Brewers Association many years ago, and she said, if you can't find your replacement, you can't leave your post.
Well, so my viewpoint is,
laughs.
My viewpoint is, we built this nice show, and now it turns out that I started the show, past entities, and then into this one with Estella. I'm now the outsider. These 3 are now industry members, and I'm the fanatic. Yeah. And the show's in great hands. They're going to do wonderful without me, and it's just time for me to move on. I dedicated more than 10 years to advocating for the craft beer industry and community that I love, and that will never change. It's just time for me to be a little less vocal and be a little more in the background. And maybe I'll do something else, but not in a weekly burden type of way.
Make cameos on the show.
Yeah, exactly. But seriously,
he'll miss us. He's going to be begging the guest host.
Right? Exactly.
Do we want to tell our number ones real quick?
I want to hear. Before I jump off, I want to hear your number ones.
Okay, let's start with Estella. Number 1, Russian River beer of all time, Estella.
Pliny. I mean, come on. How is it? How is it not? And I will say this: Pliny is the beer that I introduce a lot of people to because we're very fortunate in San Diego that we can get it. One of my favorite bars, Machete Beer House in National City. I drink it there often, and that was a place where I got to drink Pliny next to Pliny for President. So I like hats off to you because honestly, that's my one of my favorite beers, and everybody knows that. I used to buy it at Tornado all the time. R.I.P. to Tornado, but
I know.
Yes.
Yeah. So, please don't ever stop making it because it's going to break my heart. But yeah,
I'm pretty sure Pliny is the beer they make the most of. Am I correct on that? Yeah. By far. Okay.
Yeah. 60% of our production is Pliny.
60%? Yeah. Wow. That's a big number.
Yeah.
Abel, number one.
All right, my number one comes for the fact it was my first Russian River beer. And Vinny brought it up earlier about this place called
Livewire.
And so it's a Blind Pig. And anytime I ever go anywhere, like you said, Tornado a minute ago, Stella, anytime anybody has Blind Pig, I always order it. That's always like if I order other beers, I still get that Blind Pig. It's one of my favorites. I'm not a huge Pliny fan. No breaking heart. Sorry, fellas. I'm gonna say it. But Blind Pig is always my number one to go to. And that was, like I said, that was my first Russian River beer back in like 90. Well, I would have to say 96 because I was 21 then. But I was 21 in 96.
That's awesome, man. Mr. Hernandez.
All right. So my last two, I talked about how I like how they're different every time. I think that while this is the Shun beer, this is one that I feel is very consistent and just something that has always spoken to me. If you'll indulge me for a second, there was this one time where the house that I used to live in, a swarm of bees made an entire hive within the wall of my house. And somehow made it out one day. It was an afternoon. I came home from work, and there's this bee and a bee, and then there's more bees. There's more bees. Me and my wife figure out what happened. We're like, oh my God, that buzzing in the walls was bees. So there's bees all over the place. We got to get out of here. We're going to stay with my mom. I'm like, great. Get our bags packed. We walk out, and it's like swatting bees on the way out. And I say, wait a second. And I run back in the house, swatting off bees to get this beer because I'm like, well, if this is happening, I need something. And I want this beer. It was Supplication. I love that beer so much. It's just it's one that's actually readily available. And so it's just kind of like been a companion beer for me and one that I would fight off bees for.
Brandon, there's a beer that we make because you're obviously into funky, cool Brett style beers, and it's called Yanami. And we don't distribute it outside the brewery. We sell its counterpart, Robert, sometimes, which is a Saison. Yeah. And we take Robert and then we finish it with Brett and make it a Brett finished Saison, and it's Yanami. And then if you have maybe we've shipped a little Yanami, I'm not sure.
They're both in my fridge right now.
Oh, you do have it. Okay. Yeah. Do this. Take the Robert and put it on the left, and the Yanami and put it on the right. And when you put the two labels together, they're individually each scenes of Antwerp, but when you bring them together, they make one big scene. It's a really cool packaging.
Wow, nice job.
Okay, very
great,
cool.
Man.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So I'm going to close it out with my number one. Mr. Chuck Silva asked if anyone remembers Temptation. Of course we remember Temptation. Terrific beer. Just happens to be definitely top 5 for me. But for me, a beer Vinny mentioned earlier, Sanambic. It just embodies everything I love about traditional Belgian brewing, wild, just putting your beer in your coolship or vat or what other weird names people invent for these things, letting the natural yeast of your area fall into it and control its fermentation. It is a wonderful base. It's beautiful in beatification as well, but I like the pure form Sanambic, my number one Russian River beer of all time, and one that I cannot get enough of.
It's rare that we put it out. We've put it out in different things, beer dinners, whatever. But yeah, we don't get it out much. But maybe we will more.
Please email me. Ladies and gentlemen, Vinnie Cilurzo from the mighty Russian River Brewing Company up in Russian River. No, wait, no, in Santa Rosa and Windsor. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thank
I really
you.
appreciate it.
A good time. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. So good to see you all. We'll see you down there sometime when the world opens back up.
Can't wait.
Please.
Sir.
Yes,
good.
please.
You have a great night.
Cool.
Bye.
Take care. Bye, guys.
Yeah. Holy fucking shit! That was awesome! Oh my god! Thank you, Brandon. Holy shit! That was so good, dude.
Thank you for being a great interviewer. That was so much fun.
Well, first of all,
what a wealth of knowledge that we've just had handed.
Who was
to
that
us.
guy? Who was he?
Just a surname guy. Yeah. Oh,
yeah, it was Vincent from Temecula.
Oh, okay.
Everything I've ever wanted from a podcast. So thank you. But I do want to get to one thing before we jump into the news. Maggie had a great suggestion. You know, if you've got that $100 you were going to spend on a case to get younger, there are countless local breweries right here in San Diego that could really
maybe Epic, where she works now.
Hey. Congratulations, Maggie, on your new position at Epic.
Okay. She's got that position for a while, but because it couldn't open, she couldn't work there.
Yeah, she couldn't tell anyone. Yeah, all of that.
Yeah.
And another
yes, girl.
Another brewery owner just showed up. Robert from 13 Point. Thank you, sir. Yes, it was.
Yes, Robert, you are legendary.
That was.
I loved this wonderful. That they told us what friggin'
on the course, right?
Yes.
Yeah, everything. You know, when Brandon mentioned an attention to detail. Russian River has always had an attention to detail that most breweries just fail, just don't even compare at. So,
and they don't even need to. That's the part that kills me is that they've proven themselves year after year after year for decades, and they don't really need to do that. But they keep pushing that envelope, keep investing more into things that they don't need to invest in.
Right.
And it's just really great because I love the fact that people, other brewery owners and brewers, look up to them, and they create that great example, and they're willing to share the information. It's really great. And that all funnels down because there's all these other brewery owners throughout the years who have done the exact same thing. It's really cool.
Yeah. And we will say this, usually we get to a lot of the comments, you guys, but today it just wasn't going to happen. Yeah, it wasn't going to happen. And
we had to keep it to 2 hours and 4 minutes and 55 seconds.
With him. Yeah, we still love you. We still love you.
Yeah, we needed to hear Vinnie talk, which is, I feel we gave him enough time that he got all of his points across, and that's what we needed. We will ask your random questions next week, guys. I'm sorry. Okay? But that's just the way it is.
Speaking of random, Jason Ryan, this was his first show.
Oh, hey,
wow,
Jason.
Dude.
Hola.
Jason. First off, thank you. And secondly,
it's all
see you next week.
Bro.
I was going to say, you've now seen the best show we've ever done. So
we're all downhill from here.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for Brandon Hernandez's moment. Every week, he breaks down the craft beer news here in San Diego. San Diego Beer.news is right there. Please check him out and support him. Brandon, take it away, sir.
I love following that. Just kidding. But seriously, okay, so stop me if you've heard this before. Resident Brewing is expanding to North County. All right. So before that was going to be the case, and that they were going to go up to the Iron Fist facility, which ended up going to Pure Project, but they were really determined to keep expanding the reach of their beers, which are in downtown at the local, and they're going to do it on their search to find another manufacturing facility, which they really need because they aren't actually servicing all the people who want to get their beer, much like Russian River. They need to keep growing like that. And they haven't found the manufacturing facility, but they did find a restaurant that's huge. 10,000 square feet, interior, really nice layout. It used to be the Florentine in Sabre Springs, which, if you're not so familiar, it's west of Poway off the I-15, right below Carmel Mountain Ranch. So in addition to that 10,000 square feet of interior, they have 2 to 3 acres of outdoor seating already set up for that sort of a thing. And they'll be going in there, and it should be a nice way for them to showcase their beers up there. We'll see how it goes. It's got a built-in business park with it too. So they'll instantly be the fun happy hour place.
Well, hey, Brandon, is Craig Nelson still doing the brewing over there? I mean, that's a lot to take on.
As of right now, he is.
Okay.
Oh, no, wait. Was his last day yesterday?
Yes,
At any rate, Craig Nelson, who we didn't all know until now, is Biochemist Extreme. He has quite the background, and he decided that he wanted to, as much as he's loved the brewing industry, he wants to go and make a difference in this entire pandemic and try to help us get through COVID-19. So he's going to start out doing that with the county of San Diego. They have, 24-hour testing going on, and someone's got to work those tests and actually make them happen after they've done the invasive swab on you. So he will be working with that, and when the pandemic's over, he thinks he'll probably go into that industry, not with the county, probably a private company, but we'll see what happens. But he's probably not coming back to brewing. But we had him for a good number of years, and he did great work at Resident. So in the meantime, what they're doing is he won't be at head brewer. So Bill Lindsay, who we all know from Thunderhawk Ailments, he's been over there, and they're promoting him to head brewer, which is a wonderful thing. Great guy, great brewer. And Robert Masterson, the brewmaster, who is the founding member from a fermentation standpoint in that semi-family run business, he'll be going in there and spending a little bit more time as well because they are a man down. And that's a quality replacement. Good brewing bones there. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, they're going to be busy getting more beer out there, and people want it. So we'll see what happens.
Craig was on our show a few times, actually.
Yeah, love him.
Amazing guy, wonderful guy. I'm excited for Bill. Love that guy as well, and I'm sure they're going to do amazing. And North County's a little far for me, especially since they're in downtown. Obviously, I'm going to keep sticking to the downtown location.
Do we know, are they keeping the original location forever? They're not totally moving to Poway. This is going to be just a second location.
No. So they have 10,000 square feet of room there, but there's nothing in there for, I don't think it's even zoned for anything that would be manufacturing. The place is built as a restaurant. And so that's what it is. And the kitchen will remain the kitchen. The space will remain the space. But no, they are going to solve the entire production deal by getting someplace probably I would think more affordable in the real North County. Like we're talking State Route 78.
Yeah.
And so they've been looking for years. Yeah. They almost had it, but they've looked at Escondido, San Marcos, Vista, all of that. And we'll see what happens. But they definitely need to have something they can grow into, not just, be a stopgap. Like, okay, we have this much demand. I think they want to grow demand that they can service other states even at some point.
Oh, wow. Okay. Is it all still under social syndicate? Like, it's all the same thing?
That thing, I believe there is some kind of delineation there. Okay. And that it's not exactly social syndicate, even though, of course, you have Jimmy there, but they're separate in some sense, as far as I understand. So I can't really speak completely knowledgeably about it, but I can't say that it's right under it either.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, but speaking of that, they will have the coffee company that's under social syndicate. I forget the name at the moment, at the new restaurant, and it should be pretty fun. I'm looking forward to it because, for once, somebody's moving into almost my neighborhood. In Rancho Bernardo, I can finally do because that's a long, expensive Uber.
Let's attempt to name another Sabre Springs brewery.
Well, OG's is right across the street when you get to Carmel Mountain Ranch. It's so funny. Like, you cross the street and you're in another neighborhood, and OG's was there for a long time. But
they're not I love OG's for how they started 30 years ago, but they don't brew any beer anymore. They have Left Hand do it all. Right. So it's a little different. It'll be real. I think between this and there's also Hop Stop that opened in Poway, right across the street from the old hamburger factory and the train and that part of town.
I was stoked to go there in stupid COVID.
I know, right? And so you've got two craft beer entities that have entered the Poway area, traditionally very underserved with craft beer. Hopefully, similar to some other neighborhoods that that craft beer has creeped into. I'm more thinking. I hope it ends up being more like Chula Vista, where it's a successful creep.
Yeah. Don't forget Lightning Jim. And actually, fun fact: Intergalactic was supposed to be in Poway. but
Oh,
then it
really?
just didn't work out, and
didn't
he
work
moved to
out.
Miramar. So I think there's something about maybe I can't speak knowledgeably on it, but I think there must be something in Poway that, much like an Encinitas per se, like they're just not working out for breweries. But I think if they see enough success from these types of operations, they might say, "Oh wow, I feel really stupid because if I go one block outside of Poway, I'm seeing all the success happen, or this bar is doing well. Why don't I, lessen the regulations on manufacturing and allow that to occur as well, and we can have some homegrown beer."
I was
One
gonna
brewery is
say,
great, but
yeah, I was gonna say, is there regulations behind that maybe is a deterrent to them, or or just it doesn't work out in some way, shape, or form?
I don't know. I think it's going to take some kind of sea change in Poway, because there was a big pub at the end of town as well, and it completely failed too. And it was a nice place, good beer selection. I don't know. Who knows? And so I think that city government's getting behind beer in a big way and kind of helping to promote them, and also having kind of chambers of commerce getting involved and really push it is really integral to the success of an operation, and really a craft beer culture coming into a municipality. But maybe these places will make that difference. I got to think that if Resident goes in there with that restaurant background and the great beer that they make, it could really change things. So we'll see.
Well, and one of the big advantages is that location has a fuck ton of parking. So Poway is not a walking town. It's not like North Park. You don't just go from brewery to brewery to brewery on feet. So you have to
just drive straight to the Costco and come back.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's why some of the other attempts at craft beer, planting a flag, let's say, have not gone so well. The Hop Stop location being directly across from, an attraction, basically. Old Poway is kind of an attraction. It's not like Legoland or anything, but it is an attraction. It's okay. I think that'll do well. And I think like you said, Resident has the beer quality and the clout, especially since they got into Petco during Padre games. I think they now have what most places need before they make an expansion like this is, their interest can't be served with the amount of beer that they can currently offer the public. So hopefully it'll be successful for them. Obviously, we wish Resident the most success possible moving into there.
Maybe a future show, like when we go back in person, we'll be at that.
Wouldn't that be crazy? Oh man, in-person shows.
In-person shows? What are those?
I guess I timed my retirement kind of shitty for that. But anyways, that's okay.
You can come be in the audience.
Yes, great. For sure.
You can come heckle us.
I was going to say, no matter what, whenever you guys get to have the first public show, fucking well I will be right there, throwing things at you,
throwing those tomatoes at Brandon. I get it.
And David Martin just happens to say hi right now.
Hello, Mr. Martin.
Hey. Second best producer in the world. I get it.
What's up, Maple Man?
Speaking of support and David Martin, we couldn't possibly do the show without the support of incredible group of humans. Many of them are here listening right now. We call them the patrons. And what this is about is if somehow we provide you enough entertainment or education. Tonight, heavy education. But
a lot of education and knowledge. Damn, tonight was just knowledge.
People pay $100 for that. How much?
Yeah, right.
Brian?
Well,
throw us $6 this way. Come on, guys.
If you feel indebted to us, go to patreon.com/the Indie Beer Show. At $6 a month, that's the pint level. We give you an awesome shout out every week. And this week, the people that deserve this awesome shout out are Ben, Bill, Brian and Krista from Pariah, Brian Goo, Captain Eli, Casey, Dan Diego's, Dante from Pariah, David Martin, who's right there.
Hi.
Douglas Brown.
Gary with Beer Early, Greg Pritz, the Indie Beer Show brand, COVID-19 Pandemic, Socially Distancing Zorball LLC. Thank you, Maggie. Hoppy Craftsman Podcast, James, Jared, Jason, Jess from Ale Tales, where Stella is.
Over there.
In the house.
From Quaff, who is listening, Joseph Sokar, Joey from Hoppy Beer Gear. Juan, Judith, the beer historian, Kenneth, honorary patron for life, Larry Smith. By the way, Brandon, huge shout out for naming an award after our buddy Larry Smith, and a great award. Why don't you tell the public one more time what the Larry Smith Award is about?
Okay, so the day we found out we lost Larry, I was really beside myself, and I kept thinking, what could maybe we do to commemorate his life and times and all the support he gave to breweries? Because one thing I always loved about him is that he loved it at such a base level. He loved the beers, but he really liked going to the brewery and the tasting room, and he really appreciated the people he interfaced with there. And that meant the most to him, I think, is just sitting there, getting, having somebody interface with him, talk with him, talk about the beer, talk about life, whatever it might be. But he just loved that social aspect, and he really appreciated the people who did it right. So I thought, what can we ever do? And I was like, there should be like some kind of award for customer service at a brewery. We call it the Larry Smith Award. And that kind of was like the genesis for the entire San Diego Beer News Awards. So that entire thing just exists because I really wanted to pay tribute to him. And in this way, it's all full circle. It honors the breweries. It honors what he loved so much. And I'm just glad to be able to put his name out there. And hopefully year after year, we can keep doing it. And people remember who Larry was. And I loved seeing that the breweries who really appreciated his patronage, especially those guys up in North County, because he was always on that SR-78, the Hops Highway.
Yeah, he was a big Hop Highway traveler.
Yeah. So at any rate, if you haven't nominated for that customer service award or any of the other awards, go ahead and do it. But when that happens, and eventually when we get to the point where there can be in-person things, I envision hopefully someday a trophy that goes every year and just keeps getting etched, very Stanley Cup.
Yes,
I
love that.
It exists in a tasting room until the next person is awarded it, or they can keep it if they're that good. But it's got Larry's name on it. It'd be super cool. So that's the ultimate plan. But right now we're at the very base level, but we'll get there. And it'd be super fun. Larry, rest in peace forever. We love you.
We love you. And this tribute you have decided to go with, Brandon, is awesome.
Awesome.
Getting back to it, Liz from Hoffsbauer, who's here. Hey. Matt and Candace Bobineau, who are here. Matt from The Perfect Pour. Miguel, Mr. Peacock from Town Caffrey, love you. Mike, Nathaniel, Norman, OC Burgirl, Pacific Beer Chat, all the way up in Canada. Robert from 13 Point, who is here. Rudy, the artist, who is here. Sergio Nigos, and the best name in patron history, Jagus. We love you all. And once again, if you want to support us, that's patreon.com/theindybeershow. If you want to talk to us, you can email us at cheers@indy.beer. We're at Indie Beer Show in Twitter, The Indie Beer Show in Instagram, and on Facebook. If you want to be the person that leaves us the first voicemail of this year, still hasn't happened, but it could be you. That's 619-798-6038.
Hello.
Ryan, how are you?
Hello.
Yes. I'm well, sir. How are you? Actually, I now have it set up that I don't even answer that. So one of the fun things was like the last person that actually left us a voicemail, Liz Hoffsbauer. I saw it was her, and I was like, "Oh, she's leaving a voicemail." It hit red.
It actually rang to your phone?
Yeah, because it's a Google Voice number that I have forwarded to my phone. Multiple times.
There are so many prank call possibilities right now.
Oh my God! David, did you hear that? Call him.
When we first started
see this can of worms.
Yes, I know. I just opened. When we first started the show and we got more voicemails, often I would screw it up and answer because I don't know if any of you have Google Voice numbers that have forwarded to your cell phone. You can't tell where the phone call's coming from. You can see the number and all that, but you can't tell. It doesn't say, "Hey, this is a Google Voice phone call. Are you sure you want to answer it?" Until after you answer it. So multiple times I would answer the phone. They'd be like, I just wanted to leave a voicemail." Like, okay, call back. Anyways, that number is 619-798-6038. Before we go, Brandon, fucking thank you.
That was awesome.
It was amazing.
You did a great job.
It was again something that I have always wanted to spend some time with Vinny. I have met him several times in person. We've hung out at Toronado. Last time we went to CCBA, which was like 2 years ago in Long Beach. Last one I went to, he happened to sit next to me in a panel. I've had conversations with him. Nothing in depth like that, though.
Not like that. Yeah.
Always the shake the hand politician Vinny. Let's say not the beer geek Vinny, and that was just very special for me.
My favorite part was his obvious belief that nobody could fill your shoes.
It was really funny.
It was like, geez, this show's going to cease to exist, right? No, probably. Yeah.
No, it's not. You guys are going to be fucking fine with again.
Wow.
Like you're actually in the industry. I just kind of sit out here on a level of onion. It'll all be
awesome
okay.
And important. I think.
Hey, maybe we should bring David back, and then we'll just have a competition.
Wouldn't that be great? That'd be right. Can we have a live producer off?
No. A pee off.
Edit. You have 45 seconds to edit this clip. Go.
Anyway, I got that beat all day long, bro. I got that beat all day long. He's got to do other things. I got that beat.
Well, I hope everybody enjoyed the show.
We're officially done. We're officially done, you guys.
Our good guest goes away and the real us comes out. Anyways, for everyone listening that commented that was here, we really, really appreciate it. We had more live viewers of this show than any other in the past. Not so surprising, but also awesome. For Abel, Estella, Brandon, and myself, I'm Brian. Sometimes I don't say my name, but that's what happens. I'm trying to hit the brand button. Damn it. You've been listening to the Indie Beer Show. Thank you and good night.